Hello guys, welcome to Ben 10 What Ifs. So in this video, we will see, what if Ben 10 found the Astral Omnitrix and love triangle with Gwen and Julie? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Blank, blank, underscore, blank. Chapter 1. Astral Awakening. The golden hour cast long shadows across Bellwood University's campus as Ben Tennyson sprinted between quantum physics buildings. His worn messenger bag slapping against his side. Late again. Professor Xander would definitely notice this time, especially after Ben's promise to be punctual following last week's tardiness. 3 years into his astrobiology degree, and he still couldn't master the basic concept of showing up on time. The familiar weight of the Omnitrix pressed against his wrist beneath his jacket sleeve, a constant reminder of responsibilities beyond midterms and research papers. At 20, Ben Tennyson had saved the universe more times than he could count, yet academic deadlines remained his most persistent nemesis. "Hold the door," he called, spotting a dark-haired student about to enter the lecture hall. The young man glanced back, rolled his eyes, and deliberately let the door swing shut. Classic. Ben skidded to a stop before the closed door, took a breath, and mentally prepared for the inevitable attention as he entered. His phone buzzed, probably Gwen wondering where he was. Their study group had started 15 minutes ago. With a resigned sigh, Ben pushed through. As expected, 63 pairs of eyes swiveled toward him as the door's hinges betrayed his entrance with a high-pitched squeal. Professor Xander paused mid-sentence, laser pointer hovering over a complex diagram of exoplanetary atmospheric compositions. "Mr. Tennyson," the professor said, her voice carrying the particular mixture of disappointment and amusement she reserved exclusively for him. "How gracious of you to join us. Perhaps you'd care to explain the implications of methane signatures in exoplanetary atmosphere. Since you've clearly mastered the material enough to miss the first 20 minutes. Ben straightened, adjusting the strap of his bag. 3 years ago, he might have mumbled an excuse or shrunk under the scrutiny. Now, he smiled confidently and stepped forward. "Methane signatures above 1% atmospheric composition generally indicate biological processes on Earth-like planets," he answered without hesitation. "However, recent evidence from the Kepler 438 system suggests abiotic methane production through serpentinization can mimic these signatures, creating false positives in our CH for extraterrestrial life, unless we also detect oxygen-methane disequilibrium, which would be much stronger evidence for biological activity." The lecture hall fell silent. Professor Xander's IBR/OWS rose slightly, the closest thing to approval she ever displayed. "Adequate, Mr. Tennyson. Take your seat." She turned back to her presentation. "As Mr. Tennyson correctly pointed out, we must be CAUTIOUS about interpreting atmospheric biosignatures." Ben slid into an empty seat near the back, noticing a few impressed glances from classmates. Little did they know he had first-hand experience with over a dozen alien atmospheres. The theoretical knowledge from textbooks merely confirmed what he'd breathed himself while transformed. His phone vibrated again. This time he discreetly checked it beneath the desk. "Gwen, where are you? We've been waiting at the library for 25 minutes. Ben got caught up in Xander's lecture. "We'll be there in 30. Gwen, something urgent came up. Meet me at the observatory instead. Celestial anomalies could be connected to that thing we discussed." Ben's posture straightened, instantly alert. That thing was their code for unusual alien activity. After years as a hero, ordinary college life sometimes felt like an elaborate disguise, a costume he wore more awkwardly than any alien transformation. The remainder of the lecture crawled by with excruciating slowness. Ben's mind raced through possibilities: Increasing invasion, chronosapian temporal disturbance, another hybrid situation. By the time Professor Xander dismissed class, he had mentally prepared for 16 different crisis scenarios. The campus observatory perched atop Mendel Hill, its white dome gleaming in the late afternoon sun. Ben jogged up the spiral staircase, taking the steps 2 at a time. The door to the main telescope room stood ajar, hushed voices drifting through the gap. "Definitely not natural," came Gwen's voice, tense with concentration. The energy signature matches nothing in the plumber database. Could it be cloaked somehow? A male voice that Ben immediately recognized as Rook Blanco, his former partner who now worked off-world with the plumbers most of the time. Rook. Ben pushed the door open. When did you get back to Earth? The Ravanagander turned, his cat-like features breaking into a smile. Ben dude. He had adopted the casual greeting years ago, never quite getting it right. I arrived approximately 4 hours and 23 minutes ago when Magister Tennyson requested my assistance. Gwen looked up from her laptop, her auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Violet energy flickering subtly around her fingertips, a sign she'd been using her anodite abilities recently. At 20, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had faced down cosmic threats and university admissions boards with equal determination. About time, she said, but the familiar half-smile softened her words. Look at this. She turned her laptop to reveal a complex gravitational wave analysis, meaningless to most humans but instantly recognizable to anyone familiar with extraterrestrial phenomena. That's a dimensional rupture pattern, Ben said, leaning closer. Similar to what Professor Paradox leaves, but messier. Precisely, Rook nodded, and it appeared approximately 18 hours ago in the Sonoran Desert, 64 kilometers from Bellwood. Ben frowned, crossing his arms. Why wasn't I notified immediately? Grandpa wanted to verify it wasn't a false reading, Gwen explained. The pattern is unlike anything we've seen before, not Chronosapian, not Contemelia, not even matching Paradox's quantum signature. There's more, Rook added, his expression growing serious. Approximately 1 hour ago, something came through. Something or someone? Ben asked, already reaching for the Omnitrix beneath his jacket sleeve, the familiar motion as natural as breathing. Gwen exchanged glances with Rook before answering. We don't know. The energy spike was massive, then nothing. No tech signature, no movement. Whatever it is, it's just waiting. Then I guess we shouldn't keep it waiting any longer, Ben said, already moving toward the door. My car or plumber transport. Actually, Rook said with evident pride, I have made certain modifications to my prototroop that I believe you will find most impressive. 20 minutes later, Ben gripped the overhead handle as Rook's modified prototroop screamed through the desert sky at speeds that would make a Kinesolaran envious. The vehicle no longer resembled an Earth truck in any meaningful way, now sporting Galvan propulsion technology that bent the air around them into a semi-phase state. You know, Ben shouted over the roar of engines, when you said, modifications. I thought you meant heated seats or a better sound system. Rook beamed with obvious pride. I have those as well. The liquid polymer seat covers adjust temperature based on biometric readings, and the audio system incorporates sonoerosion harmonic crystals for perfect acoustic resonance. Gwen, somehow managing to still work on her laptop despite the violent maneuvers, looked up. We're approaching the anomaly site. Energy readings are fluctuating. Whatever's down there is becoming active. Perfect timing, Ben said, checking the Omnitrix with practiced nonchalance that masked his heightened alertness. Ready for a little old-school Team Tennyson action. Rook began their descent, the Proto-TRUK's engines shifting to a lower pitch as they approached a barren stretch of desert. From above, Ben could see a perfect circular depression in the earth, approximately 50 meters in diameter, the sand fused into glass-like patterns that spiraled toward the center W. Here something glinted in the fading sunlight. Scan for life forms, Ben instructed as they hovered 20 meters above the site. None detected, Rook reported, checking his instruments. But there is a significant energy reading coming from the center of the formation. I'm detecting quantum fluctuations, Gwen added, her eyes briefly glowing with mana as she extended her senses. Whatever that object is, it exists partially in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Only one way to find out what we're dealing with. Ben moved toward the exit hatch. Drop me in the center. Rook, maintain HOV position for quick extraction if needed. Gwen, I know, she cut him off with a smirk. Magical backup and make sure you don't do anything stupid. The usual. Ben grinned back, feeling the familiar pre-mission adrenaline surge, a sensation he'd never admit to missing during mundane college lectures. Just like old times. The hatch opened beneath him, and Ben dropped into free fall, his finger already pressing the Omnitrix interface. In a flash of green light, his human form disappeared, replaced by the crystalline body of Diamond Head. The transformation completed just before impact, his RDENED legs absorbing the shock as he landed in a three-point stance at the center of the crater. "Show off," Gwen's voice came through his plumber badge, but he could hear the smile in it. The crater floor felt strange beneath Diamond Head's crystalline feet, not just glass-fused sand but something more deliberate, like circuitry etched into the earth itself. And there, half buried in the center, a device unlike anything he'd encountered before. "Ben, are you seeing this?" Gwen asked over the comm. The energy readings just spiked. "I see it," Diamond Head replied, approaching cautiously. "It looks almost like an Omnitrix. But not like any version I've seen." The object was palm-sized, similar in basic design to his own Omnitrix, but instead of green and black, it shimmered with an opale scent surface that seemed to contain shifting galaxies within its depth. No clear interface was visible, just a seamless, gently pulsing artifact that responded to his proximity by glowing brighter. Quote, "Azimuth never mentioned creating another one," Diamond Head said, circling the device without touching it. "Rook, any matches in the plumber database?" "Negative," Rook replied. "However, its quantum C.G. nature bears similarities to celestial sapien technology." Diamond Head frowned. "That's concerning." "Ben, don't touch it," Gwen warned sharply. "At least let me analyze it first." "Too late for that recommendation," a familiar voice echoed across the crater. Ben spun around to see Professor Paradox standing several meters away, his lab coat immaculate despite the desert dust, his expression uncharacteristically grave. "Professor," Diamond Head straightened, "your timing is impeccable as always." "Actually, Benjamin," Paradox said, consulting his pocket watch with a frown, "I'm precisely 3 minutes and 42 seconds late. Which is rather concerning given the circumstances." The Time Walker approached, his movements cautious, unusual for someone who typically strolled through apocalyptic scenarios with casual ease. "This device," Paradox continued, gesturing toward the object, "is not of Azimuth's creation, nor is it entirely celestial sapien in origin. It is something else. So, mething even I have only glimpsed in the furthest temporal peripheries." "What exactly are we dealing with here?" Diamond Head asked, the crystalline plates of his forehead furrowing. "It calls itself the Astral Omnitrix," Paradox explained. "Where your current device transforms your physical form, this one operates on deeper principles, transforming essence rather than merely matter." A flash of green light enveloped Diamond Head as Ben returned to human form, approaching the device with newfound caution. "Essence? You mean like souls?" In a manner of speaking, Paradox nodded. "Though, consciousness patterns might be more accurate. It doesn't merely transform your body into alien forms, it connects your consciousness to the collective spiritual essence of species across dimensions." "That sounds intense," Ben said, studying the device with new respect. "More than you can possibly imagine," Paradox replied. "And potentially more dangerous than any power you've wielded before." "If it's so dangerous, why is it here?" Gwen asked, her voice coming from behind them as she descended on a platform of mana. "Was it sent specifically for Ben?" Paradox's expression turned troubled. "That is the question, isn't it? The Astral Omnitrix chooses its bearer, not the other way around. And it appears to have chosen you, Benjamin." As if responding to its name, the device pulsed brighter, lifting slightly from the sand. Intricate patterns of light began spiraling outward from it, tracing the circuit-like designs etched into the crater floor. "That can't be good," Ben muttered, taking an instinctive step back. "It's scanning you," Paradox explained, determining compatibility. The light intensified, converging into a beam that shot directly toward Ben's current Omnitrix. Instead of striking it, however, the light enveloped his entire arm, painless but impossible to shake off. "Professor," Ben called, voice tight with tension. "What's happening?" "It's beginning the transition," Paradox said, making no move to intervene. "I'm sorry, Benjamin, but once started, this process cannot be stopped without grave consequences." "What consequences?" Gwen demanded, mana gathering around her hands. "What's it doing to him?" Before Paradox could answer, Ben's Omnitrix began to respond, its familiar green light pulsing in counterpoint to the opalescent glow of the astral device. For a moment, the two energies seemed to struggle against each other, green versus cosmic multicolor, until suddenly both lights flared blindingly bright. Ben felt a sensation unlike anything he'd experienced before, not painful but profoundly disorienting, as though his consciousness was being stretched across vast distances while remaining anchored to his body. Images flashed through his mind, alien worlds he'd never visited, species he'd never encountered, dimensions beyond human comprehension. When the light finally faded, the familiar weight of the Omnitrix on his wrist had changed. Looking down, Ben saw not his trusted device, but the opalescent Astral Omnitrix, now seamlessly bonded to his skin as though it had always been there. "Well," he said after a moment of stunned silence, "that's new." "Ben." Gwen approached cautiously. "Are you okay?" "I think so," he replied, examining the device. Unlike the mechanical interface of his previous Omnitrix, this one seemed almost liquid, its surface rippling slightly with his pulse. "It feels different, like it's not just on my wrist but somehow connected to every part of me." The Astral Omnitrix integrates more deeply with its bearer than Azimuth's creation, Paradox explained. "It doesn't merely sit upon your DNA, it resonates with your quantum signature." "Great," Ben muttered. "Just what I needed. More cosmic responsibility right before finals week." Rook landed nearby, Proto-Tool already deployed in scanning mode. "Fascinating. The device appears to be altering your bioenergy field. Your life sign readings are fluctuating between standard human parameters and something else entirely. I believe a test is in order," Paradox suggested. "Though I recommend starting with a transformation you're familiar with." Ben nodded, studying the new interface. Instead of the familiar pop-up hologram selector, the surface of the Astral Omnitrix shimmered with miniature galaxy-like patterns that seemed to respond to his thoughts rather than physical interaction. "Here goes nothing," he said, concentrating on a familiar transformation. "Let's try Heat Blast." He pressed his palm against the device, expecting the familiar flash of transformation. Instead, the opalescent light spread from the Omnitrix in luminous patterns across his skin, tracing what looked like constellations along his arms, across his chest, and up to his face. His body remained human, but incandescent lines of energy mapped his skin in patterns reminiscent of pyronite biology, the flame pathways of a heat blast. "Whoa," Ben gasped, feeling heat building not just around but within him. When he lifted his hand, flames danced across his fingers, not engulfing them as with a true heat blast transformation, but emanating from his still human skin. "Fascinating," Rook murmured, adjusting his scanner. "You appear to maintain human biological structure while manifesting the energy signature and abilities of a pyronite. The Astral Omnitrix doesn't transform your matter," Paradox explained. Observing with scientific interest, it channels the essential energy patterns of other species through your existing form, creating a hybrid state. Ben experimentally generated a small fireball, watching it hover above his palm. The sensation was entirely different from being Heat Blast. He wasn't a being of fire, but rather a human channeling fire's essence. "This is incredible," he admitted, the flame patterns across his skin brightening with his excitement. "I can feel the fire, but also myself. It's like having Heat Blast's abilities without losing my human perspective." "A double-edged sword," Paradox warned. "You retain greater conscious control, but you lack the instinctive mastery that comes with complete transformation. You must learn each ability anew, even for alien forms you believed you had mastered." As if to prove his point, the flames along Ben's arm suddenly flared wildly, scorching his jacket sleeve before he could contain them. "Okay," Ben winced, quickly suppressing the fire. "New rules." "Got it." A distant rumbling interrupted their discussion, drawing their attention to the sky where dark clouds had begun gathering with unnatural speed. Lightning crackled between them, but instead of the typical blue-white electricity, these bolts pulsed with the same opalescent energy as the Astral Omnitrix. "That," Paradox said with evident concern, "is not supposed to happen." "What is it?" Gwen asked, raising a mana shield instinctively. "Dimensional feedback," Paradox explained. "The Astral Omnitrix's activation has created a temporary weakness in the barriers between realities. And that's bad because," Ben prompted, already knowing he wouldn't like the answer. "Because," Paradox replied grimly, "there are entities in Other dimensions that have been waiting a very, very long time for such an opportunity. As if summoned by his words, the clouds parted, revealing a tear in the sky itself, a jagged rift through which something massive and shadowy began to emerge. Benjamin, Paradox said quietly, I believe you're about to have your first real test with your new device. The creature that emerged from the rift defied easy description, a shifting amalgamation of shadows and light, with multiple limbs that seemed to exist in different phases of reality simultaneously. Its body stretched and contracted as it fully entered their dimension, eventually settling into a vaguely humanoid shape that towered at least 20 feet tall. What is that thing? Ben asked, the flame patterns on his skin intensifying defensively. A void sentinel, Paradox answered, extra-dimensional beings that guard the boundaries between realities. They're not inherently hostile, but they are absolutely relentless when they perceive a dimensional breach. The sentinel's attention fixed on Ben, or more specifically, on the Astral Omnitrix. Multiple eyes opened across its shifting form, all focusing with unmistakable intent. And it thinks I'm the breach, Ben concluded, already shifting into a combat stance. Precisely, Paradox confirmed. To it, the Astral Omnitrix represents a dangerous anomaly that must be contained. Containment generally meaning destruction in these cases, I assume. Ben asked dryly. Your understanding of interdimensional peacekeeping protocols has improved significantly since our first meeting, P. Paradox noted with inappropriate academic pride. The sentinel made its move, one massive arm stretching impossibly to strike at Ben from above. He dodged with practiced ease, the flame patterns on his skin brightening as he launched a counterattack, sending a concentrated blast of fire toward the creature. The flames passed through the sentinel's arm harmlessly, dissipating into wisps of smoke. Physical attacks won't work, Gwen called, already summoning her mana. It's partially out of phase with our reality. Helpful information to have mentioned earlier. Ben shouted back, narrowly avoiding another strike that cratered the ground where he had stood. Rook opened fire with his proto-tool, the energy bolts similarly passing through the sentinel without effect. Perhaps a different transformation would be more effective. Ben nodded, concentrating on the Astral Omnitrix again. The flame patterns receded, replaced by crystalline lines reminiscent of Diamond Head's structure. Instead of transforming fully, his skin now bore luminous patterns like living circuitry, glowing with the internal light of a Petrosapian. Let's see if this works better, Ben said, focusing his new ability. Hi's right arm remained human in shape but took on the crystalline properties of Diamond Head, allowing him to form his hand into a diamond-hard blade. When the sentinel attacked again, he met its strike with his transformed arm. And this time connected with a satisfying impact that made the creature recoil. Ben exclaimed. Petrosapian crystal must exist across enough dimensional planes to hit it. Ben, Gwen called urgently. Behind you. He spun to find another rift opening directly behind him, smaller than the first but equally concerning as spindly, insect-like limbs began emerging from it. We've got a problem, Ben announced, backing away while maintaining his guard against the sentinel. How many of these things are going to come through? The Astral Omnitrix's activation has created a beacon effect, Paradox explained, somehow remaining untouched by the chaos despite standing in its midst. Until you learn to properly control it, it will continue to draw attention from across dimensional boundaries. Perfect, Ben muttered, just what my GPA needed, an interdimensional invasion during finals week. The insectoid creatures now fully emerged, 6 of them, each roughly N-sized with too many limbs and compound eyes that glowed with the same opalescent light as the rifts. Unlike the sentinel, they moved with clear purpose and coordination, surrounding Ben in a practiced formation. Those are rift crawlers, Paradox identified them, scavengers that feed on dimensional energy. They're drawn to the Astral Omnitrix like moths to flame. Any weaknesses I should know about? Ben asked, shifting his stance to track all 6 creatures at once. They're actually quite fragile in our dimension, Paradox offered helpfully. But they compensate with numbers and speed. As if on cue, one crawler launched itself at Ben with blinding velocity. He barely managed to raise his crystallized arm in time, impaling the creature, which dissolved into particles of light upon contact. One down, Ben said, already moving to confront the next. 5 to go. Ben, the sentinel, Gwen warned. He turned to see the massive entity gathering what appeared to be energy between its many limbs, forming a swirling vortex aimed directly at him. Instinctively, Ben shifted his astral transformation again, the crystalline patterns fading as new, circuit-like lines formed across his skin, the energy pathways of a conductoid. Feedback might be helpful here, he said, bracing himself as the sentinel released its energy blast. Instead of dodging, Ben extended his hands, now transformed into the plug-like appendages of feedback. The energy struck him directly, but rather than causing harm, it flowed into him through the conductoid pathways now mapped across his body. The sensation was overwhelming, far more intense than when fully transformed as feedback, but he managed to absorb the entire blast. Now that's what I call a power-up, he grinned, his body now crackling with absorbed energy. With a shout of effort, he redirected the power back at the sentinel in a concentrated beam. This time, the attack had visible effect. The creature's form destabilized where the energy struck, parts of it seeming to phase in and out of existence. It retreated slightly, its many eyes blinking in what might have been confusion or reassessment. Meanwhile, Gwen had created a series of mana constructs to trap the remaining rift crawlers, while Rook used his Proto-Tool's capture function to contain another. We need to close these rifts, Gwen called, struggling to maintain her constructs. The creatures fought against them with surprising strength. I'm open to suggestions, Ben replied, maintaining his conductoid channels while keeping the sentinel at bay. The Astral Omnitrix created them, Paradox said. In theory, it should be able to close them as well. But you would need to synchronize with it at a much deeper level than you've achieved so far. Of course, Ben muttered. No pressure or anything. A new sensation drew his attention to the Astral Omnitrix, a subtle vibration accompanied by shifting patterns within its opalescent surface. Instinctively, he understood it was trying to communicate something important. I think it wants me to try something specific, he said, focusing on the device. Images flashed through his mind. Constellations, energy patterns, dimensio. Null coordinates that made no logical sense yet felt profoundly right. Without fully understanding how, Ben knew what transformation he needed. The energy lines across his body shifted again, taking on a completely new pattern unlike any alien he'd used before. These weren't the familiar pathways of a pyronite or conductoid, but something more fundamental, lines that seemed to map not just energy but reality itself. What's happening to him? Gwen asked, concern evident in her voice. He's accessing a transformation the original Omnitrix could never provide, Paradox explained, watching with evident fascination. A dimensional constant, a being that exists simultaneously across all realities. Ben felt his consciousness expanding beyond his body, beyond the desert, beyond Earth itself. He sensed the rifts not as tiers but as connections, pathways between places that were never meant to be separate. The sentinel and crawlers appeared not as threats but as fragments of a greater whole, displaced and confused. With movements that felt both deliberate and instinctual, Ben raised his hands toward the largest rift. The patterns across his skin brightened until he appeared to be made of pure light. His human form merely a vessel for something far more vast. I see it now, he said, his voice resonating strangely as though coming from multiple sources at once. The pattern, the connections, they're beautiful. Ben, focus, Gwen urged, maintaining her mana constructs with visible effort. Close the rifts. Nodding, Ben reached not with his physical hands but with his expanded awareness. Grasping the edges of the dimensional tiers and drawing them together like closing a zipper. The rifts began to shrink, their edges sealing with flashes of opalescent light that matched the patterns on his skin. The sentinel, sensing what was happening, made one final desperate lunge toward Ben. Without even looking, he raised a hand, and the creature froze in midair, suspended by forces beyond physical understanding. You don't belong here, Ben told it, not unkindly. Return to your station. The breach will be sealed. Whether the sentinel understood his words or merely the intent behind them, it ceased struggling. As the final rift closed, the creature and remaining crawlers were drawn back through the diminishing opening, until with a final flash of light, the desert sky returned to normal. Unmarred by any interdimensional tiers. The dimensional patterns across Ben's skin gradually faded, leaving him swaying slightly on his feet, suddenly exhausted. Gwen was at his side instantly, supporting him before he could fall. That was intense, Ben managed, his voice returning to normal. An understatement worthy of your grandfather, Paradox remarked, approaching them. Yo, you just manipulated fundamental dimensional constants, something beings far older than humanity rarely attempt, let alone achieve. I didn't know what I was doing, Ben admitted. It was like, the Omnitrix was guiding me. As I said, the Astral Omnitrix integrates more deeply than Azimuth's creation, Paradox explained. It doesn't just transform you, it transforms with you, adapting to your needs and capabilities. Rook joined them, his proto-tool already scanning the area. The dimensional disturbances have ceased completely. Quite impressive, Ben dude. Thanks, Ben replied, examining the device on his wrist with new respect and trepidation. So what now? How do I get my old Omnitrix back? Paradox's expression turned serious. I'm afraid that's not possible, Benjamin. The Astral Omnitrix has not merely replaced your previous device, it has integrated with it and with you. They cannot be separated without catastrophic consequences. Great, Ben sighed. So I'm stuck with an interdimensional beacon that turns me into a cosmic nightlight instead of actual aliens. Just when I thought college life was getting too normal. Not exactly, Paradox corrected. With practice, you should be able to achieve transformations more similar to what you're accustomed to. The Astral Omnitrix offers unprecedented flexibility. The energy pattern manifestation you experienced today is merely its default state when wielded by a novice. Quote, so I need to train with it, Ben concluded. Learn its capabilities. Master new forms of transformation. Precisely, Paradox nodded. And quickly, I'm afraid. The activation of the Astral Omnitrix has sent ripples across multiple dimensions. What you experienced today was merely the immediate response. Others will have noticed as well, others with far less benign intentions than dimensional guardians. There's always a catch, Ben muttered, though the familiar weight of responsibility settled across his shoulders with practiced ease. Any idea who created this thing in the first place? Doesn't seem like Azimuth's style. That, Paradox said with uncharacteristic hesitation, is a question for another time. For now, I suggest you focus on mastering your new abilities before attempting to unravel its origins. The Time Walker checked his pocket watch again, eyebrows rising slightly. And with that, I must be going. Reality waits for no man, not even those who travel through it. He paused, fixing Ben with an unusually direct gaze. Be careful, Benjamin. The Astral Omnitrix may be the most significant development in your journey since you RST discovered the original device all those years ago. Its potential is limitless. With a blue flash, Paradox disappeared, leaving the three friends alone in the desert crater. So, Gwen broke the silence, alien invasions, dimensional rifts, and mysterious all-powerful devices. Just another Tuesday for Team Tennyson. Ben managed a tired smile. Pretty much, though I'd really hoped to get some studying done tonight. I have Galvan learning algorithms installed in my Proto-TRUK's computer system, Rook offered helpfully. Perhaps we could review your astrobiology materials on the flight back to Bellwood. Thanks, Rook, Ben replied, looking down at the Astral Omnitrix, its surface still shimmering with stars and galaxies. But I think I've got a whole new curriculum to worry about now. As they made their way back to the Proto-Truk, Ben's phone buzzed with an incoming message. Expecting Grandpa Max checking in on the situation, he was surprised to see a different name on the screen. Julie. Back in Bellwood for the North American Tennis Championship. Free for coffee tomorrow. Been too long. Ben stared at the message, a complex mix of emotions washing over him. Julie Yamamoto, his first serious girlfriend, now an international tennis star, coming back to Bellwood just as his life was taking another bizarre turn. The timing couldn't be more ironic. Everything okay? Gwen asked, noticing his expression. Yeah, Ben replied, slipping the phone back into his pocket. Just life getting complicated in multiple dimensions at once. The Astral Omnitrix pulsed softly on his wrist, as if acknowledging the sentiment. By the time they reached Bellwood University campus, night had fallen completely. Rook dropped them off near the science building, promising to return the next day with additional equipment to help Ben train with his new device. You should get some rest, Gwen advised as they walked toward the dormitories. Dimensional manipulation takes a lot out of even advanced Anodites. I can't imagine what it did to your human physiology. I'm fine, Ben insisted, though the bone-deep exhaustion suggested otherwise. Just need some smoothie therapy. Wanna grab one at Mr. Smoothies before they close? Quote. Gwen gave him a knowing look. Ben, it's after midnight. Even Mr. Smoothie has limits. Since when? He joked weakly, but conceded the point. Rain check, then. Tomorrow after class, actually. Gwen said hesitantly, I need to research these dimensional constants you were manipulating. If more rifts are going to open, we need to be prepared. Ben nodded, unsurprised. Gwen had always been the responsible one, addressing problems while he was still processing them. It was part of why they made such an effective team. Call me if you find anything, he ate as they reached the point where their paths diverged, her to the mystical arts dormitory, him to the standard university housing. Always do, she replied with a small smile. And Ben, be careful with that thing. The way it integrated with you, it's not like the other Omnitrix models. It feels more sentient. Great, Ben muttered, just what I need. Jewelry with an attitude. They parted ways, and Ben trudged the remaining distance to his dormitory building. As a junior, he had a small single room, a privilege earned partly through academic performance and partly through the university's quiet recognition of his extracurricular activities, saving the world. Unlocking his door, he was greeted by the familiar organized chaos of his living space, astronomy posters sharing wall space with alien tech souvenirs. Textbooks stacked beside sumo slammer collectibles, and his desk cluttered with both academic papers and plumber reports. Ben collapsed onto his bed without bothering to change, fatigue finally overtaking adrenaline. The Astral Omnitrix continued to pulse gently on his wrist, its opalescent light casting subtle patterns across the ceiling. What exactly are you? He murmured, holding his arm up to examine the device. And why choose me? As if in response, the surface rippled, briefly displaying what looked like a constellation pattern before settling back into its galaxy-like swirls. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a campus alert. Attention students. Unusual meteor shower expected tonight. Astronomy department invites observation from campus observatory 0100-0300 hours. Professor Harding supervising. Ben frowned. Given the night's events, he doubted any meteor shower was purely natural. The Astral Omnitrix pulsed more intensely, as if confirming his suspicion. No rest for the hero. He sighed, pushing himself back up despite his body's protests. He made it to the window just in time to see the first meteors streaking across the sky, except these moved with deliberate patterns, changing direction mid-flight in ways no natural object could. Suddenly, his phone rang. The caller ID showed a name he hadn't seen in years. Hello, he answered cautiously. Tennyson. The voice was instantly recognizable. Kai Green, archaeologist, occasional ally, and complicated romantic history. Please tell me that's not your handiwork lighting up the sky over Bellwood. Nice to hear from you too, Kai, Ben replied, already reaching for his jacket. And no, not my doing. But definitely my problem. I figured, she said, and he could picture her determined expression. I'm at a dig site just outside town. Just uncovered something you might want to see, ancient glyphs showing something that looks suspiciously like what's on your wrist. Ben froze. How did you? I didn't, Kai interrupted. But I just got a very interesting call from your grandfather, and I'm looking at carvings that are over 10,000 years old showing exactly what he described. The Astral Omnitrix isn't new, Ben. It's been here before. The device on his wrist pulsed brighter, the constellation pattern briefly reappearing as if responding to being named. Where's your dig site? Ben asked, already moving toward the door. Sending coordinates now, Kai replied. And Ben, whatever's coming down from the sky, it's heading straight for these ruins. Ben looked at his wrist, where the Astral Omnitrix now glowed with steady purpose, then back to the window where the meteors had multiplied, their trajectories converging toward the outskirts of Bellwood. I'm on my way, he said, ending the call. As he raced from his dorm room, Ben couldn't help but feel that familiar mix of dread and excitement that had defined his life since he was 10 years old. New Omnitrix, new aliens, New dimensional threats, but always the same responsibility. Whatever was coming, whatever the Astral Omnitrix truly was, he would face it as he had faced everything else, head-on, with determination. And preferably with a smoothie in hand afterward. The night sky continued to fill with false meteors, their opalescent trails matching the light of the device on his wrist. Somehow, Ben knew this was just the beginning of something much bigger than dimensional rifts and guardians. And somewhere in Bellwood, a tennis champion was unpacking her bags, unaware that her ex-boyfriend was ABO. To be at the center of another cosmic crisis. Just another day in the life of Ben Tennyson. Chapter 2. Dimensional Convergence. Dawn painted Bellwood's outskirts in watercolor hues of amber and lave. Ender as Ben's car crested the final hill toward Kai Green's archaeological dig site. He'd driven through the night, fueled by gas station coffee and the persistent, subtle pulse of the Astral Omnitrix against his skin. Sleep could wait, answers couldn't. The excavation sprawled across a previously unremarkable stretch of desert, now transformed by methodical trenches, canvas-covered equipment, and the unmistakable silhouettes of scanning drones hovering above precisely gridded sections. Portable lights illuminated the site despite the breaking day, creating pools of harsh white illumination against the soft dawn. Ben parked beside a mud-splattered research vehicle emblazoned with Friedkin University's archaeology department insignia. His fingers drummed against the steering wheel as he studied the site, gathering himself before the inevitable reunion. His relationship with Kai had always been complicated. A figure emerged from the largest tent, silhouetted against the sunrise. Even at a distance, her confident stride was unmistakable, purposeful, measured, unhesitating. Kai Green moved through the world as though it had been waiting for her arrival, a quality Ben had both admired and found infuriating since childhood. He stepped out of the car, the desert's morning chill seeping through his jacket. The Astral Omnitrix flared briefly, emanating warmth that countered the cold, responding to his discomfort without conscious command. Another reminder of its unsettling integration with his physiology. Tennyson, Kai called, approaching with archaeological tools still clutched in gloved hands. Dust clung to her practical field clothing, cargo pants and a thermal shirt beneath a weathered expedition vest. Her hair was pulled back in a tight braid, practical yet somehow elegant. Took you long enough. Traffic was murder, Ben replied with deliberate lightness, gesturing toward the empty pre-dawn highway behind him. Something about the world ending tends to clear your schedule. The ghost of a smile crossed her face before professional focus reasserted itself. No hug, no handshake, their history made conventional greetings awkward. Instead, she nodded toward the excavation center. You'll want to see this immediately, she said, already turning. We've been carbon dating artifacts from this chamber since yesterday. The results make absolutely no scientific sense. Ben followed, noting how the archaeological team members watched him with poorly concealed curiosity. His public identity had long been known, but the attention never became comfortable. Define. No scientific sense. Ben prompted as they navigated between precisely arranged excavation grids. Try negative 12,000 years, give or take a century. Kai's tone remained professionally detached. Despite the impossibility of her statement. And before you ask, yes, we've confirmed with 3 separate dating methods. Whatever we've uncovered predates known human civilization in North America by roughly 7,000 years. That's. Ben searched for an appropriate response. Impossible by conventional archaeological standards. Kai supplied, leading him toward a reinforced entryway dug into the hillside. Welcome to my everyday existence since I started specializing in xenoarchaeology. The entrance descended into darkness, illuminated by string lights that cast elongated shadows across rough-hewn steps. The temperature dropped noticeably as they descended, and Ben detected a subtle vibration beneath his feet, not seismic, but something artificial and rhythmic. The chamber was discovered during a routine geological survey, Kai explained, her voice echoing slightly in the passage. Ground-penetrating radar picked up anomalous density readings. Initial excavation revealed unstructured architecture where none should exist. And let me guess, it doesn't match any known ancient civilization, Ben concluded. It doesn't match any earthly civilization, Kai corrected. The material composition includes trace elements not found on our periodic table. The passage widened suddenly into a vast chamber that stole Ben's breath. Circular in design, its walls curved upward to form a perfect dome at least 50 feet overhead. Every surface was covered in intricate etchings, not hieroglyphs or pictographs, but mathematical formulations and stellar maps that glowed with faint, pallescent light identical to the Astral Omnitrix's luminescence. Whoa, Ben breathed, turning slowly to absorb the spectacle. That was my professional archaeological assessment as well, Kai replied dryly, though wonder tinged her voice. But you haven't seen the centerpiece. She guided him toward the chamber's heart, where her team had established an elaborate scanning apparatus surrounding a raised dais. Upon it rested what initially appeared to be a scale model of a solar system, spherical objects of varying sizes orbiting a central crystalline core. Only as they approached did Ben realize the planets weren't physically connected to anything. They floated, suspended by invisible forces, their orbits perfectly synchronized. It's a dimensional map, Ben realized aloud. Each sphere represents a different reality. Kai shot him a surprised glance. How could you possibly know that? In answer, Ben raised his wrist, where the Astral Omnitrix had begun to pulse in perfect synchronization with the model's central crystal. Patterns flowed across its surface that matched the chamber's wall etchings exactly. Because it's showing me, he said quietly. The same way it showed me how to close the dimensional rifts yesterday. The model's glow intensified as he approached, the orbiting spheres accelerating their paths around the central crystal. One sphere, a bluish orb with swirling G patterns, began to pulse in unmistakable resonance with Earth's position in the model. Ben, Kai said with uncharacteristic hesitation, what exactly happened when you found the Astral Omnitrix? Before he could answer, the entire chamber trembled. Dust showered from the ceiling as the vibrations beneath their feet intensified. The archaeological equipment surrounding the dais gave alarming readings, their screens flashing warning indicators. Everyone out, Kai shouted to her team members, immediately taking charge. Standard evacuation protocol, move. The researchers needed no further encouragement, abandoning their stations and rushing toward the entrance. Ben remained rooted in place, watching as the dimensional model's movements became increasingly erratic, spheres colliding and sing through one another in impossible patterns. That includes you, Tennyson. Kai grabbed his arm, attempting to pull him toward the exit. I can't, Ben said, transfixed by the model. Something's wrong with the dimensional boundaries. This is showing real-time disruptions. Which is precisely why we should evacuate before. Her words cut off as a blinding flash erupted from the central crystal, bathing the chamber in opalescent light. The Astral Omnitrix responded immediately, projecting matching energy patterns that spread up Ben's arm and across his torso. Unlike his previous transformations, this appeared involuntary, the device acting of its own accord. Ben. Kai's voice sounded distant despite her proximity. What's happening? Through the overwhelming sensory input, Ben perceived a fundamental shift in the chamber around them. The walls seemed to thin, becoming translucent, revealing glimpses of other places, alien landscapes, impossible geometries, star patterns unlike any visible from Earth. The chamber is a nexus point, he managed, his voice distorted as the Astral Omnitrix continued spreading its pattern across his body. A dimensional anchor, and it's destabilizing. Kai's archaeological training warred visibly with self-preservation. Can you stop it? I can try. Ben focused on the Omnitrix, attempting to direct its energy rather than being overwhelmed by it. The patterns across his skin shifted, taking on the crystalline structure of Petrosapian pathways, a deliberate transformation rather than reactive response. With newfound clarity, he approached the dimensional model. Each sphere now projected tiny holographic scenes from its corresponding reality, some peaceful, others in various states of conflict or chaos. The central crystal had developed hairline fractures, leaking energy in erratic pulses. The nexus is failing, Ben observed, crystalline energy flowing from his transformed hand as he reached toward the model. Something's forcing connect, tions between dimensions that shouldn't exist. His fingers made contact with the central crystal. Immediately, his consciousness expanded beyond the chamber, beyond Earth, beyond conventional understanding of space-time. He perceived vast networks of dimensional boundaries, most stable, but several developing dangerous weaknesses. At the center of each disturbance, a familiar energy signature pulls. The same pattern as the Astral Omnitrix. There are others, Ben realized with shock. Other devices like mine, in other dimensions. The revelation lasted only moments before his awareness snapped back to his physical body. The chamber had stabilized somewhat, the walls regaining their solidity, though the dimensional model continued its erratic behavior. Ben, Kai's concerned voice penetrated his daze. Your eyes were glowing. He blinked, the crystalline patterns receding from his skin as he released the central crystal. The Astral Omnitrix isn't unique, he explained, struggling to articulate late concepts that defied conventional language. It's part of a network, devices scattered across different dimensions. They're all activating simultaneously. Kai processed this with remarkable composure. Which explains the dating anomalies. This chamber exists partially outside normal time. It's a monitoring station, Ben agreed. Built to observe dimensional boundaries and the ground beneath them lurched violently. Interrupting his explanation, cracks spread across the chamber floor, emanating from the dais. The dimensional model's central crystal shattered with a sound like breaking glass, sending the orbiting spheres crashing to the ground where they dissolved into particles of light. Now we run, Ben stated, grabbing Kai's hand without further discussion. They sprinted toward T. He exited as the chamber began collapsing behind them, not crumbling as an ordinary structure would, but folding in on itself like paper being compressed into a single point. The phenomenon defied physics, spaces that should remain separate overlapping impossibly. What about your team? Ben shouted as they raced up the entrance passage. Already evacuated, Kai replied between breaths. Emergency protocol. They're at minimum safe distance. Quote, they emerged into daylight to find the archaeological site abandoned, equipment left where it stood. In the distance, vehicles were visible retreating along the access road. Above the excavation, the sky had taken on an unnatural iridescence, colors shifting in patterns that matched the Astral Omnitrix's surface. That can't be good, Ben muttered, watching, as the excavated entrance behind them imploded with a sound like reality itself tearing. Where the hillside chamber had been, a perfect hemisphere of energy now pulsed, a dimensional bubble containing glimpses of multiple realities visible through its translucent surface. The Nexus chamber didn't collapse, Kai realized, professional curiosity momentarily overriding caution. Its phase shifting between dimensions, and pulling pieces of other realities into ours, Ben added, noticing how the landscape around the bubble was beginning to distort, desert sand transforming into purple crystalline structures, air solidifying into geometric patterns that defied Euclidean geometry. His phone rang, a jarringly mundane sound amid the cosmic disturbance. Checking the display, he saw Julie's name and felt a twist of guilt. Coffee. They were supposed to meet for coffee this morning. Probably not the best time, he told the phone apologetically before silencing it and returning his attention to the dimensional anomaly. We need containment, Kai stated, already retrieving specialized equipment from her research vehicle. These sensors might help us understand the bubble's expansion rate. Ben nodded, though his attention had shifted to the Astral Omnitrix. The device's surface had begun displaying a specific pattern, a constellation configuration he somehow recognized despite never having seen it before. I think I need to try something, he said, focusing on the pattern. The transformation came more naturally this time, energy flowing across his body in controlled pathways rather than chaotic expansion. The constellation pattern manifested as luminous lines connecting points across his skin, creating a network reminiscent of cosmic energy flows. I've never seen that transformation before, Kai noted, pausing her instrument setup to observe. It's not one from the original Omnitrix, Ben explained, feeling energy gathering in his transformed hands. This is something the astral version is teaching me. A cosmic cartographer. A what? A being that can navigate and manipulate dimensional boundaries, Ben elaborated, approaching the energy bubble cautiously. At least, that's the impression I'm getting. The bubble's surface rippled as he neared, responding to his presence. When he extended his transformed hand toward it, energy arced between his fingertips and the bubble's exterior, not hostile, but recognizing, communicating. Through this connection, Ben perceived the bubble's nature more clearly. It wasn't simply a damaged section of reality but a deliberate wreck. Configuration. the Nexus chamber transforming itself into something new. A doorway. Someone's coming through, he realized aloud, stepping back. The chamber is becoming a permanent dimensional portal. Someone or something? Kai asked, readying what appeared to be a modified containment field generator, standard archaeological equipment for potentially dangerous artifacts, repurposed for their current crisis. Before Ben could answer, the bubble's surface parted like liquid mercury, creating an opening through which a figure emerged, humanoid in basic shape but with blue-tinged skin and flowing white hair that moved as though underwater despite the desert air. His clothing resembled academic robes fashioned from material that shimmered with the same opalescent energy as the Astral Omnitrix. Professor Paradox, Ben ventured, recognizing something familiar in the figure despite clear differences from the Time Walker's usual appearance. The being smiled, the expression too wide, too knowing for a human face. Not quite, Benjamin Tennyson, though we have met before, across the boundaries of probability and circumstance. Chronian DNA detected, the Astral Omnitrix announced unexpectedly. The first time it had spoken aloud since attaching to Ben. Temporal displacement patterns identified. Perceptive little device, the being commented, studying Ben with evident fascination. So T.S. is the iteration where you received the astral variant. Interesting choice by the architects. Who are you? Kai demanded, positioning herself beside Ben, containment device ready. Ah, Kai Green, constant in so many timelines. The being's attention shifted to her with equal interest. I am Professor Epic, counterpart to your paradox across the dimensional divide. I oversee temporal anomalies in adjacent realities. Why are you here? Ben asked, maintaining his transformed state despite the apparent lack of immediate threat. Epic's expression sobered, because what happens in one dimension rarely stays contained there. The activation of your Astral Omnitrix has triggered a cascade effect across the multiverse. Devices are awakening simultaneously in multiple realities, devices never meant to be active concurrently. The dimensional boundaries are weakening, Ben concluded, recalling what he'd perceived through the Nexus Chamber's model. Precisely. Epic produced what resembled Paradox's pocket watch, though its face displayed complex multidimensional equations rather than time. The consequences will be significant. Meaning catastrophic, Kai translated dryly. That depends entirely on you, Benjamin. Epic replied, returning the device to his robes. Or more specifically, on your mastery of the Astral Omnitrix. It is both the problem and the solution. The cosmic energy patterns across Ben's skin pulsed as if in agreement. No pressure or anything, indeed. Epic smiled the too wide smile again. But first, we must address the more immediate concern. Your University is about to experience a rather dramatic renovation. Bellwood University, Ben questioned, transformation patterns fading as confusion disrupted his focus. What does that have to do with? The primary nexus is not here. Epic interrupted, gesturing dismissively at the remains of Kai's excavation. This is merely an observation post, a satellite facility. The true dimensional anchor lies beneath your center of learning. Constructed there millennia ago by beings you might call the architects. Kai's archaeological interest visibly peaked. What beings? From which period? Questions for another convergence point. Epic replied cryptically. For now, know only that the central nexus chamber is destabilizing. When it fails completely, the dimensional barriers around Bellwood will collapse. Ben's phone vibrated again, this time displaying Gwen's contact information. He answered immediately. Kind of in the middle of something, he began. Ben. Gwen's voice carried unmistakable urgency. Something's happening at the university. The science building just disappeared. As in, it was there, and now there's just empty space with weird energy readings. Ben met Epic's knowing gaze. We're on our way. After ending the call, he turned to Kai. Think your research vehicle can handle off-road driving? Better than that college student death trap you call transportation, he replied with a hint of their old competitive banter. Good, because we're taking a shortcut. Ben focused on the Astral Omnitrix again, this time visualizing the energy patterns of a Kinesolaran, XLR8's speed-based abilities. The transformation flowed more smoothly now, luminous lines mapping velocity channels across his skin, his perception shifting as time seemed to slow around him. Not a complete metamorphosis into XLR8, but human form enhanced with the alien's essential speed properties. I can get us there faster, he explained, voice vibrating slightly with contained energy. Kai eyed his transformed state skeptically. You want to carry me while running at supersonic speeds? Hard pass. Actually, Ben grinned, I was thinking of something more direct. He turned to Epic. The dime, Encional bubble. It's connected to the university nexus, isn't it? A shortcut between locations. The interdimensional professor raised an eyebrow, impressed. Your intuitive understanding of dimensional mechanics is developing rapidly. Yes, the distortions are connected, though traveling through them would be extraordinarily dangerous for most beings. Good thing I'm not most beings, Ben replied. The speed patterns on his skin shifting to incorporate elements of the cosmic cartographer transformation, a hybrid ability the Astral Omnitrix seemed to create instinctively based on his needs. He extended his hand to Kai. Trust me. She hesitated only briefly before taking it. Against my better judgment. A trait you share across all timelines, Epic commented with evident amusement. Ben ignored the cryptic remark, focusing instead on the dimensional bubble. With his enhanced perception, he could see beyond its surface, through the distorted space-time, toward a specific connection point. A thread of reality leading directly to Bellwood University. Hold on tight, he instructed Kai before stepping forward. They entered the bubble together, immediately enveloped in a kaleidoscopic tunnel of fractured realities. Glimpses of alternate Earths flashed past, some recognizable, others profoundly alien. Ben focused on maintaining their trajectory, following the specific thread he'd identified while shielding them both with the energy field generated by his transformed state. Kai's grip tightened on his hand, but to her credit, she remained silent, analytical gaze absorbing the impossible sights around them. Her scientific discipline provided resilience that ordinary humans would lack in such circumstances. The journey lasted both an eternity and an instant, time becoming meaningless within the dimensional corridor. Then, abruptly, they emerged onto Bellwood University's central quad, exactly where the science building should have stood. In its place yawned a perfect hemispherica. Void. Not empty space but an absence more fundamental, as though reality itself had been excised. Students and faculty had gathered at a safe distance, expressions ranging from shock to the peculiar. Excitement unique to those who lived in a city regularly visited by extraterrestrial phenomena. Ben. Gwen's voice cut through the crowd's murmurs as she pushed her way forward, Kevin Levin close behind her. She stopped short upon seeing Kai. Oh, you brought company. Good to see you too, Gwen, Kai replied evenly. Kevin, never one for social subtleties, looked between them with badly concealed amusement. This should be interesting. Quote. Later, Ben cut in, the transformation energy receding from his skin as he focused on the void. We've got bigger problems. Yeah, like the missing building, Kevin agreed. Any idea what happened to it? It's not missing, Ben explained, approaching the void's edge cautiously. Its phase shifted into a dimensional pocket. The real structure is still there, just out of sync with our reality. Gwen's eyes narrowed. How could you possibly know that? He had help, a voice announced as Professor Epic stepped out of thin air beside them, causing Kevin to instinctively form his hand into metallic armor. Stand down, Ben instructed. He's a friend of Paradox. Sort of. Professor Epic, the being introduced himself with a slight bow. Temp. Oral dimensional physicist from adjacent reality stream 729 beta. Another one of these guys, Kevin muttered, though he allowed his armor to recede. Great. Campus security had established a perimeter around the void, though their caution tape seemed laughably inadequate against a dimensional anomaly. Among the gathering spectators, Ben noticed a familiar face, Julie Yamamoto, her expression FTing from concern to recognition as their eyes met across the distance. The complication of her presence struck him with unexpected force. After their cancelled coffee meeting and now this crisis, explanations would be necessary. Explanations he had no time to formulate. Ben, Gwen prompted, noticing his distraction. Focus. What's our next move? He dragged his attention back to the void. According to Professor Epic, there's a nexus chamber beneath the science building, a dimensional anchor point that's destabilizing. We need to access it and stabilize the connections before the distortion spreads. And how exactly do we access a building that's not currently existing in our dimension? Kevin asked with practical skepticism. Ben raised his wrist, where the Astral Omnitrix pulsed with NC raising intensity the closer they approached the void. With this, it's connected to the Nexus somehow, part of the same network. The Astral Omnitrix serves as both key and map to the dimensional pathways, Epic elaborated. In the correct configuration, it can guide you through the phase variants. I'm coming with you, Gwen stated firmly. As am I, Kai added, unpacking equipment from a SAWS. She'd somehow brought through the dimensional shortcut. These sensors might help identify structural weaknesses in the dimensional boundaries. Kevin sighed resignedly. Guess I'm coming too, Somio. Nay needs to punch whatever's causing this. Noble as always, Mr. Levin, Epic remarked with that unsettling smile. Ben nodded, focusing on the Astral Omnitrix to initiate another transformation. This time, he visualized a combination of abilities, the dimensional navigation of the cosmic cartographer with elements of Ghost Freak's phase-shifting capabilities. The energy patterns formed across his skin in an intricate network of luminous lines, primary pathways resembling constellations overlaid with secondary patterns that pulsed with spectral energy. The hybrid transformation felt natural, as though the Astral Omnitrix was learning from his needs, adapting to combine abilities in ways the original device never could. Everyone stay close, he instructed, extending his transformed hands toward his friends. This will feel strange. Define strange. On the Tennyson scale, Kevin quipped, nonetheless taking Gwen's hand, who connected to Kai, creating a human chain with Ben at the lead. Phase shifting through dimensional barriers while maintaining corporal cohesion strange, Ben replied, stepping toward the void's edge. Breathe normally, don't let go, and whatever you do, don't open your eyes until I say so. Wait, what happens if we open our? Kevin began. Ben stepped forward, pulling them all into the void before Kevin could finish his question. The transition felt like SSING through layers of increasingly dense liquid, resistance building with each boundary they crossed, reality itself seeming to protest their passage. For Ben, the experience was illuminated by his transformed perception. He could see the dimensional layers separating like pages in a book, each reality distinct yet connected by threads of fundamental forces. The Astral Omnitrix guided him, highly GHTING the correct path through the overlapping dimensions toward the Nexus Chamber's true location. After what felt like minutes but could have been seconds, the resistance suddenly vanished. They stepped into a vast circular chamber that dwarfed the satellite facility Kai had excavated, a perfect dome at least 100 feet in diameter, walls covered in the same mathematical formulations and stellar maps. But vastly more complex and comprehensive. You can open your eyes now, Ben informed the others, releasing their hands as his transformation energy receded slightly, maintaining only H to illuminate the otherwise dark chamber. Kevin immediately doubled over, hands on his knees. Never again, he gasped. Gwen recovered more quickly, her anodite heritage providing resilience against dimensional travel. Her hands glowed with mana as she created light sources that floated toward the chamber's high ceiling, illuminating their surroundings. This is, Kai breathed, archaeological, passion overriding all other concerns as she beheld the chamber. This predates any known civilization on Earth. The implications for human history. I hate to interrupt your academic excitement, Kevin interjected, straightening. But where exactly are we? Inside the missing building or somewhere else entirely? Both and neither, Epic answered, appearing beside them without having visibly traveled through the void. The Nexus Chamber exists in a pocket dimension anchored to multiple realities simultaneously. Your science building was merely constructed above one of its access points. At the chamber's center stood a structure that immediately drew everyone's attention, an enormous apparatus resembling a mechanical orrery, but with hundreds of orbiting components rather than a mere planetary system. Each component represented not planets but entire dimensions, their movements precisely calibrated to maintain separation between realities. Currently, the apparatus was malfunctioning visibly, components colliding, orbits degrading, energy arcing between parts that should remain isolated. At its center, a crystalline core identical to the one from Kai's excavation pulsed with erratic energy. The dimensional regulator, Epic identified it, constructed by the architects to maintain separation between realities that were never meant to intersect. Ben approached the device, Astral Omnitrix responding with increasing luminosity. And it's failing. Precisely when you received the Astral Omnitrix, Gwen noted, suspicion evident in her tone. Coincidence. There are no coincidences in dimensional mechanics. Epic replied. Only convergences of probability. Before further discussion could occur, a new voice echoed through the chamber, familiar but unexpected. Fascinating technology, significantly beyond current human development. They turned to find Drive. Elena Validus emerging from the shadows, scientific equipment in hand, expression alight with intellectual curiosity. Her presence was jarring. The brilliant nanite specialist had maintained minimal contact with Ben since their complicated history in high school. Elena. Ben's surprise was genuine. How did you get in here? The same way you did, I imagine, she replied with casual confidence, approaching the group. Dimensional phase shifting, though my method relied on technology rather than biological transformation. She gestured to a device strapped to her wrist, sleek, silver, unmistakably advanced. Nanite-based personal phase shifter. Still experimental, but effective enough for this application. You followed us, Gwen concluded, suspicion evident. I followed the dimensional distortion, Elena corrected, attention already shifting to the malfunctioning regulator. As Bellwood University's new quantum physics professor, unexplained spatial anomalies fall under my research jurisdiction. Ben processed this new information with surprise. You're teaching here now. Started last semester, Elena confirmed without looking up from her scanner. Your cousin knows. She's in my advanced theoretical applications seminar. Gwen had the grace to look slightly abashed at Ben's questioning glance. It didn't seem relevant to mention at the time. Kevin snorted. Yeah, why would your ex-girlfriend with nanite powers teaching at your university be relevant? She's not my. Ben began automatically before catching himself. Not important right now. Elena, what are you seeing? Elena's professional demeanor betrayed no reaction to the awkward exchange. The device operates on principles similar to my nanite research, microscopic machines working in concert to maintain macroscopic effects. But these are quantum scale, possibly subatomic components. She approached the regulator, scanner extended. The failure appears progressive rather than catastrophic. It's been degrading for some time. Approximately 10,000 years, Kai supplied, her own instruments gathering data. Based on my excavation findings. Elena shot her an assessing look. Archaeologist, xenoarchaeologist, Kai corrected. Kai Green. Doctor. Elena Validus. A professional nod of acknowledgement before Elena returned to her analysis. The degradation rate suggests deliberate tampering rather than natural entropy. The implication hung in the air until Kevin verbalized it. So someone's been messing with this thing on purpose. The question isn't who. A new voice announced as a swirling portal of violet energy materialized on the chamber's far side, but why? Charmcaster stepped through, magical energy crackling around her hands. Silver hair reflecting the chamber's opalescent light. Her expression betrayed conflicting emotions, scientific curiosity warring with magical opportunism. The dimensional barriers are weakening by design, she continued, approaching with calculated confidence. The convergence was planned millennia ago. Gwen's hands immediately blazed with defensive mana. What are you doing here, Charmcaster? The same thing as your scientifically minded friends, the sorceress replied, gesturing toward Elena and Kai. Research. The magical disruptions from this nexus point have been setting off every mystical alarm across dimensions. Even Legerdemain is experiencing feedback effects. Despite their adversarial history, Ben recognized the legitimate concern beneath Charmcaster's practiced arrogance. You know something about this chamber. It wasn't a question, and Charmcaster didn't treat it as one. Ancient texts in my father's library referenced the architects and their dimensional regulators. They built a network across multiple realities to maintain separation after a catastrophic convergence event in prehistory. The dimensional schism, Epic confirmed. When realities that had been one were forcibly separated to prevent complete universal collapse. The chamber trembled suddenly, the regulator's malfunctions intensifying. Components that had been merely colliding now began to shatter, releasing bursts of dimensional energy that warped small pockets of reality within the chamber. A section of floor near Kevin briefly transformed into what appeared to be liquid metal before stabilizing again. We're running out of time, Ben stated, approaching the regulator despite the increasing danger. The Astral Omnitrix pulsed in synchronization with the central crystal, reactive patterns spreading up his arm without conscious transformation. The dimensional barriers are already compromised, Elena reported, checking her instruments. I'm detecting phase variances throughout Bellwood. The city will experience temporal spatial anomalies first, Epic explained calmly, as though discussing weather patterns rather than reality breakdown. Then progressive dimensional bleed through as barriers fail completely. Can we repair it? Gwen asked, already gathering mana between her hands, prepared to attempt magical reinforcement. Charmcaster shook her head. The regulator is beyond repair. It's reached the end of its operational lifespan. Then we need a replacement, Ben concluded, the Astral Omnitrix's reactive patterns intensifying across his body. Or at least a temporary solution until we can find one. Impossible, Elena stated flatly. Technology this advanced would take decades to reverse engineer, let alone replicate. Not with technology, Ben countered. An understanding forming in his mind as the Astral Omnitrix communicated concepts through impression rather than words. With this, the device on his wrist pulsed brightly, projecting a holographic diagram that matched the regulator's structure but incorporated Ben's DNA pattern as a central component. The Astral Omnitrix isn't just connected to the dimensional network, he realized aloud. It's designed to replace the regulators when they fail. Of course, Kai breathed, comprehension dawning. That's why the archeo-astronomical calculations in my dig site point to this exact year. They were predicting when the regulator would reach critical failure. And why the device chose you specifically, Elena added, studying the holographic diagram with intense focus. Your experience with the original Omnitrix makes you uniquely capable of serving as a dimensional anchor. Kevin's expression turned skeptical. So Ben becomes what? A human dimensional regulator? Not precisely, Epic corrected. The Astral Omnitrix would serve as the regulator, with Benjamin as its operator and power source. A symbiotic relationship. That sounds. Gwen hesitated. Dangerous, Charmcaster finished for her. Rare concern breaking through her usual disdain. Power like that could burn through a human consciousness like tissue paper. Indeed, Epic agreed. Which is W. The Omnitrix has been gradually acclimating Benjamin to dimensional energies rather than connecting fully at once. The transformations are preparatory steps. Ben studied the hologram projected from his wrist, watching as it simulated the integration process. So every time I transform, I'm actually training to handle more dimensional energy. Precisely, Epic confirmed. The hybrid transformations maintain your conscious identity while exposing you to increasingly complex dimensional concepts. Another tremor shook the chamber, more violent than before. Sections of the ceiling began to crack, reality itself seeming to fracture along stress lines. Through the widening fissures, glimpses of other dimensions became visible, alien skies, impossible landscapes, entities that defied comprehension. We're out of preparation time, Ben decided, approaching the regulator's central crystal. I need to attempt the integration now. Ben, wait, Gwen urged. We don't know enough about what this will do to you. She's right, Elena agreed, placing a restraining hand on his arm. The energy requirements alone could be fatal. Not to mention the dimensional consciousness expansion, Charmcaster added. Even experienced mages go insane from much lesser exposure. Ben met each of their concerned gazes in turn, then looked to Epic. Will it work? The interdimensional professor's expression turned uncharacteristically solemn. It can work. Whether you can withstand it remains to be determined. Good enough odds for me, Ben replied with forced lightness, gently removing Elena's hand from his arm. The gesture lingered momentarily, an acknowledgement of concern rather than dismissal. He turned to the others. I need you all to clear the central platform. Whatever happens, don't our fear until the process completes one way or another. And if it goes wrong? Kevin asked bluntly. Then you'll need to find another solution quickly, Ben answered, attempting a reassuring smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Maybe ask Azimuth for ideas. Kai began, then seemed to reconsider whatever she had planned to say. Instead, she offered a simple nod of respect, an archaeologist acknowledging necessary risk. We'll be ready, Gwen promised, clearly unhappy but recognizing the necessity. Just be careful. Always am, Ben replied with a confidence he didn't entirely feel. As the others retreated to a safer distance, Ben approached the regulator's central crystal. The Astral Omnitrix pulsed with increasing intensity, energy patterns flowing across his entire body now. Not a specific alien transformation but something more fundamental, as though the device was preparing his physical form for dimensional integration. When he touched the crystal, the connection was immediate and overwhelming. Energy surged through him like lightning, every cell in his body simultaneously ignited with dimensional power. His consciousness expanded exponentially, perception extending beyond physical limitations into the structure of reality itself. Ben perceived the dimensional network in its entirety, countless realities interconnected by fundamental forces, separated by barriers. Maintained by regulators like the one he now joined with. He sensed other nexus points across dimensions, some functioning, others failing as this one had. And he perceived other beings like himself. Bearers of devices similar to the Astral Omnitrix, each serving as anchors in their respective realities. For a moment that contained eternity, Ben existed beyond individual identity, merged with the cosmic architecture of the multiverse. The experience transcended pain or pleasure, becoming pure information, raw understanding of dimensional mechanics that no human mind was designed to contain. Then, gradually, the Astral Omnitrix began filtering the information, creating buffers between Ben's consciousness and the overwhelming cosmic awareness. His perception narrowed, focusing on the immediate, E-dimensional neighborhood around Earth's reality. The failing regulator's functions transferred to the device on his wrist, its mechanisms adapting to integrate with the Astral Omnitrix's capabilities. Reality stabilized around him as the transfer completed. The fractured ceiling sealed itself, dimensional breaches closing as new boundaries established themselves. The regulator's physical components continued to disintegrate, but their function had been successfully transferred to the Astral Omnitrix, with Ben as its operator. When his awareness finally returned fully to his physical body, Ben found himself kneeling at the regulator's base, the central crystal now dark and inert. The Astral Omnitrix had transformed, its surface more complex than before, tiny representations of maintained dimensional boundaries visible within its opalescent depth. Ben. Gwen's voice reached him first, concern evident as she approached cautiously. "Are you, still you?" He managed a weak smile, surprised, said to find his voice still functioned normally despite the profound changes he'd experienced. "Still me, just with expanded perspective. The integration appears successful," Epic observed, studying Ben with newfound respect. "Most impressive, Mr. Tennyson. Many candidates across multiple timelines have attempted similar mergers with considerably less favorable outcomes. Meaning they died horribly," Kevin translated bluntly. "Or worse," Epic confirmed cheerfully. "Consciousness dispersal across dimensional barriers is generally considered less pleasant than mere death." "Good to know I outperformed the cosmic average," Ben replied dryly, accepting Gwen's offered hand to stand. His legs felt strangely disconnected, as though part of him still existed beyond physical form. Elena approached with scientific curiosity. Scanner extended toward the Astral Omnitrix. "The energy signatures have stabilized. It's actually maintaining dimensional barriers across a significant radius, at least city-wide, possibly further. Approximately 200 kilometers, Ben stated with certainty, the knowledge simply present in his mind without conscious calculation. The effect will expand dually as I adjust to the power requirements. You can sense the barriers?" Kai asked, fascination overriding concern. Ben nodded. "Like background noise. Constant but not overwhelming." He flexed his hand experimentally, watching as subtle energy patterns briefly manifested across his skin before fading. "The Astral Omnitrix is handling most of the processing. I'm just the interface. A human dimensional anchor," Charmcaster observed, studying him with new interest. "The magical potential alone is." She trailed off, seemingly reconsidering her train of thought before it fully vocalized. "Is this permanent?" Gwen asked the question everyone was considering. Ben looked to Epic, who shrugged with philosophical detachment. "Dimensional constants are rarely permanent in the absolute sense. However, until another solution presents itself or the architects return to rebuild the mechanical network." "So yes," Kevin concluded. "Ben's stuck as a human reality regulator for the foreseeable future. Could be worse." Ben responded with forced lightness. At least I can still transform. Speaking of which, he focused on the Astral Omnitrix, initiating a simple test transformation. The energy patterns formed more smoothly than ever before, flowing across his skin in precise configurations that resembled heat blasts' magma channels. Fire manifested around his hands without conscious effort, perfectly controlled despite its intensity. Transformation capabilities appear enhanced rather than diminished, Elena noted, continuing her scans. Integration with the dimensional network has improved efficiency. I can feel the difference, Ben confirmed, dismissing the transformation with a thought. It's like having access to the source code instead of just the user interface. Another tremor shook the chamber. Though milder than previous ones, the physical structure of the Nexus was still adjusting to its new regulatory mechanism. We should return to normal space, Gwen suggested. Make sure the university and city have stabilized. Ben nodded, focusing on his newly expanded awareness of dimensional boundaries. He could perceive the path back to their reality with perfect clarity, like seeing through layers of translucent fabric to their destination. I can get us back more directly now, he offered, extending his hands to form a connection circle. The phase transition should be smoother this time. Quote, Kevin eyed him skeptically but joined the circle regardless. If I throw up when we arrive, I'm aiming for your shoes, Tennyson. Duly noted, Ben replied with a faint smile, closing his eyes to concentrate. This time, the transition between dimensions felt like stepping through a barely perceptible membrane, a momentary resistance that yielded instantly to Ben's guidance. One moment they stood in the Nexus chamber, the next they emerged onto Bellwood University's central quad where a crowd of students and faculty still gathered around the void. Except the void was gone. The science building had returned to its proper place in reality, appearing completely normal despite its recent interdimensional excursion. It worked, Gwen breathed, releasing Ben's hand to survey their surroundings. Campus security and bewildered students milled about, pointing at the suddenly restored building with expressions ranging from relief to disappointment that the excitement had apparently concluded. Kevin performed an exaggerated check of his physical form. All limbs present and correctly attached. Not bad, Tennyson. Professor Epic materialized beside them, drawing startled glances from nearby students. Reality stabilization progressing nicely. Minor dimensional hiccups may occur for the next 72 hours, but nothing catastrophic. Dimensional hiccups? Kai questioned, arching an eyebrow. Temporary localized phenomena, Epic elaborated. Objects briefly phasing between realities, short-lived gravitational anomalies, possibly some temporal dilation in areas of previous instability. Nothing to concern yourselves with unduly. So business as usual in Bellwood, Kevin summarized dryly. Ben's attention had shifted elsewhere, specifically to Julie Yamamoto, who was approaching their group with determined strides, her expression a complex mixture of concern, confusion, and something he couldn't quite identify. Ship, her galvanic mechamorph pet, bounded alongside her in excited blob form, apparently sensing the dimensional energies still radiating from Ben. Ben, Julie called, stopping a few feet away, taking in the assembled group with evident surprise. What's happening? First you miss our coffee date, then buildings start disappearing. Her gaze fixed on the Astral Omnitrix, immediately noticing the difference from his previous device. And you've got a new watch. Quote, Julie, Ben began, suddenly very aware of Kai, Elena, and Charmcaster all observing this interaction with varying degrees of interest. I can explain. It's complicated, she supplied with a knowing half-smile that contained equal parts resignation and fondness. When isn't it? Ship chirruped excitedly, stretching toward Ben with unusual enthusiasm. Before anyone could react, the small mechamorph made contact with the Astral Omnitrix, a connection that caused both to pulse with synchronized energy. Ship, Julie exclaimed in alarm, but rather than harm occurring, Ship simply absorbed some of the dimensional energy before returning to Julie's side, now sporting subtle opalescent patterns within his black and green surface. Fascinating, Elena murmured, scanner immediately directed toward the transformed pet. The galvanic mechamorph has integrated a portion of the dimensional energy matrix. Adaptive technological evolution. Ship, the creature confirmed happily, seemingly pleased with its upgrade. Julie's concern transformed to bewilderment. Would someone please explain what's going on? In small words preferably. Interdimensional crisis. Ben saved reality. Got cosmic upgrade. Need coffee, Kevin summarized with admirable brevity before turning to Gwen. Speaking of which, I'm starving. Dimensional travel apparently burns calories. Gwen rolled her eyes but nodded. The cosmic smoothie place should be open by now. Actually, Professor Epic interjected, checking his peculiar watch, I believe this concludes my involvement in your timeline for the present convergence point. He turned to Ben with that too wide smile. You've adapted remarkably well, Mr. Tennyson. Better than most iterations across the probability spectrum. Thanks, I think, Ben replied. We shall meet again when the second phase begins, Epic added cryptically before disappearing in a flash of blue-white energy, leaving Ben with yet another ominous prophecy to contemplate. An awkward silence settled over the remaining group until Julie broke it with characteristic directness. Second phase. That doesn't sound promising. Welcome to my world, Ben replied with a rueful smile. Rain check on that coffee. Julie studied him for a moment, then nodded. Dinner instead. Tonight. You're buying, and you're explaining everything. She GLANCED meaningfully at the assembled group of women before adding, including whatever complicated situation you've gotten yourself into this time. Without waiting for his response, she turned and walked away, ship bouncing alongside her. Occasionally glancing back at Ben with evident fascination for his new dimensional energy. Kevin whistled low. Smooth, Tennyson. Shut up, Kevin, Ben muttered, though without genuine annoyance. After merging with the dimensional regulator, interpersonal complications seemed almost refreshingly mundane. I should return to my excavation site, Kai announced, already checking her instruments. The satellite facility may contain additional information about these architects and their network. I'll accompany you, Charmcaster stated unexpectedly. When everyone stared, she added defensively. The magical implications are significant. Purely professional interest, I'm sure, Gwen replied dryly. Elena had been studying her scanner's results with increasing fascination. Ben, these readings from your integration with the regulator, they're revolutionary. The applications for nanite dimensional interfaces alone could advance my research by decades. Great, Ben replied, suddenly feeling the accumulated fatigue of dimensional travel, transformation, and reality maintenance. Maybe we could discuss it. Not right now. Elena glanced up. Scientific. I see enthusiasm momentarily giving way to personal awareness. Of course, you need rest to properly stabilize the integration. Tomorrow, perhaps, my laboratory in the quantum physics wing has equipment that could help monitor your adaptation. Quote, sure, Ben agreed, too tired to process the implications of yet another commitment. Tomorrow. As Elena departed with a professional nod, Kevin snorted. For a guy who just saved all of reality, your personal life is a dimensional disaster zone. Kevin, Gwen chided, though her expression suggested partial agreement. It's fine, Ben assured them. Watch. As Kai and Charmcaster departed in separate directions, each occasionally glancing back with lingering interest, scientific and magical respectively. The Astral Omnitrix handles dimensional disasters. I can handle the personal stuff. If you say so, Kevin replied skeptically. Come on, let's get those smoothies. Saving reality always makes me thirsty. As they walked toward the campus exit, Ben felt the Astral Omnitrix pulse gently against his wrist, a rhythmic reminder of his new responsibility. Through its connection, he sensed the dimensional boundaries around Bellwood stabilizing, adapting to their new regulatory mechanism. The sensation was oddly comforting despite its alien nature. One crisis averted. Dinner with Julie looming. Elena's research interest peaked. Kai investigating the architect's legacy. Charmcaster's unexpected civility. And Professor Epic's cryptic warning about a second phase. Just another day as Ben Tennyson, he murmured to himself, looking up at the sky where subtle iridescent patterns still shimmered at the edge of perception. Beautiful dimensional auroras visible only to those who knew to look for them. The Astral Omnitrix pulsed in agreement. Chapter 3. Herald of Stars. Bellwood Sports Arena vibrated with the collective energy of 3,000 spectators, their anticipation a tangible force as Julie Yamamoto stepped onto the championship court. Ben watched from the athletes' reserved section, the privileged seat a small consolation for missing every previous match in her tournament run. The Astral Omnitrix pulsed gently against his skin. Its rhythm synced perfectly to his heartbeat, a sensation he'd gradually become accustomed to over the past 72 hours. "She's good," Kai observed from the seat beside him, her attention vivid. Ed between the court and the handheld scanner discreetly monitoring dimensional stability. 3 days since the Nexus integration, and she still approached every moment as a research opportunity. "Really good." Ben nodded, eyes fixed on Julie as she completed her warm-up routine with methodical precision. Tennis scholarship through college, then went pro at 19. Ranked 12th globally now. Pride colored his voice despite their complicated history. This tournament could push her into the top 10. "You've been keeping track," Kai noted, neither accusation nor question in her tone. "Hard not to," Ben replied, watching Julie execute a perfect practice serve that her opponent couldn't touch. "ESPN exists. Also internet. Also my mom, who mentions Julie's rankings approximately every other conversation." A small smile played at Kai's lips. Parents never really let go of the ones they approved of, do they? Speaking from experience, Ben raised an eyebrow. "Grandfather still asks about you," she admitted, returning her attention to her scanner. "Usually right after criticizing my choice to focus on fictional, alien archaeology rather than respectable, Native American studies." "If he only knew," Ben murmured as the Astral Omnitrix briefly flared, responding to a minor dimensional fluctuation somewhere across the city. These hiccups had become routine, small reality distortions that required minimal attention to stabilize. In the 3 days since integrating with the Nexus chamber, Ben had developed an instinctive awareness of Bellwood's dimensional boundaries, a background perception like peripheral vision, requiring conscious attention only when something changed significantly. The sensation had been overwhelming at first, but with practice and Alina's scientific monitoring, he'd adapted with surprising speed. A thunderous cheer erupted as Julie's opponent entered the court, Marissa Chen, currently ranked 8th worldwide and favored to win. The crowd's dead loyalty created competing waves of applause that washed over the arena like opposing tides. "Nervous?" Kai asked, noticing Ben's tense posture. "For Julie, never," he replied automatically. Then, with more honesty, "Maybe a little. This match means everything to her." The pre-match formalities proceeded with ceremonial precision: introductions, coin toss, final equipment checks. Ben found hymns. LF leaning forward unconsciously as Julie approached her starting position, her expression transforming into the focused intensity he remembered so well, the same look she'd worn facing alien threats alongside him years ago. "She looks like a warrior," Kai observed with professional appreciation. "Reminds me of ancient Mayan athletes before ritual competitions." Before Ben could respond, his phone vibrated with a message from Gwen. "Dimensional fluctuations increasing near University. Nothing critical yet. Enjoy the match, but stay alert." He'd barely finished reading when another message appeared, this one from Elena. "Nexus energy patterns showing harmonic resonance shifts. Monitoring from lab. Will update if intervention necessary." A third notification followed immediately: Charmcaster, her. Unexpected cooperation continuing since the Nexus chamber incident. Magical ley lines responding to dimensional pressure. Preparing containment spells as precaution. Ben suppressed a sigh. Everyone monitoring, everyone preparing, everyone expecting him to save the day again if necessary. The familiar weight of responsibility settled across his shoulders like a well-worn jacket, uncomfortable but perfectly fitted through years of wear. "Problem?" Kai inquired, noticing his expression. "Just the usual cosmic crisis brewing in the background," he replied with practiced nonchalance. "Nothing that can't wait through one tennis match." The Astral Omnitrix pulsed in what felt remarkably like disagreement, its rhythm momentarily accelerating before settling back to normal. Ben had grown increasing L.Y. aware of the device's quasi-sentience, not quite conscious communication but definitely more responsive than any previous Omnitrix iteration. The match began with explosive energy, both players attacking from the first serve. Julie's style had evolved since Ben last watched her compete, more aggressive, more confident, punctuated with technical flourishes that drew appreciative murmurs from the crowd. She took the first game with apparent ease, though Ben recognized the carefully controlled effort behind her seemingly effortless movement. 10,000 hours, he murmured, watching her reset for the next game. Kai glanced up from her scanner. Something Julie told me years ago. 10,000 hours of practice makes the impossible look easy. She was talking about tennis, but it applied to pretty much everything else too. Quote, including being a hero. Kai's question carried unexpected weight. Ben considered this as Julie executed a perfect cross-court backhand that her opponent couldn't reach. Maybe. Though I started at 10, so my hours are probably well into 6 digits by now. And it shows, Kai replied with rare directness. What you did in the Nexus chamber, most people would have been obliterated by that much dimensional energy. Before Ben could formulate a response, a disturbance near the court entrance drew his attention. Security personnel were converging on A.S. Ingle Point where reality itself seemed to waver, the air shimmering like heat above asphalt but with opalescent patterns that matched the Astral Omnitrix's surface. Dimensional hiccup, Kai asked. Scanner already redirected. Bigger, Ben replied, rising from his seat as the distortion expanded. Much bigger. The Astral Omnitrix flared with sudden intensity, projecting complex mathematical RNS across his skin, automatic defense protocols activating without conscious command. Through his enhanced perception, Ben recognized the distinctive energy signature of a dimensional tear forming, not a natural fluctuation but a deliberate breach. Get everyone away from that section, he instructed Kai, already moving toward the disturbance. And contact Gwen. Tell her we've got company. Without waiting for acknowledgement, Ben vaulted over the spectator barrier, crossing the distance to the dimensional anomaly with inhuman speed, another benefit of his integration with the Nexus energy. The security personnel registered his approach with momentary confusion before recognition dawned. Ben Tennyson's public identity made crisis intervention significantly less complicated than in his youth. Mr. Tennyson, the lead security officer acknowledged, stepping aside. Plumber jurisdiction. Dimensional incursion, Ben confirmed, the Astral Omnitrix's protective patterns intensifying as he neared the breach. Get these people back. Minimum safe distance is 50 meters. The distortion had expanded to roughly human height, its edges pulsing with energy that hurt the eyes to observe directly. Reality being forcibly reshaped by something pushing through from another dimension. The breach wasn't random. Ben could sense purpose behind it, deliberate, focused intent. A murmur spread through the crowd as people noticed the disturbance, the tennis match momentarily forgotten despite being midpoint. On court, Julie had paused, racket lowered as she spotted Ben approaching the dimensional tier. Her expression shifted from competitive focus to resigned recognition, the familiar transition whenever Ben's hero responsibilities interrupted their time together. The tear suddenly expanded with a sound like reality itself being unzipped, edges peeling back to create an opening through which stepped a figure of impossible proportions, humanoid but wrong, its body composed of what appeared to be solid starlight contained within a vaguely human outline. Each movement left trails of cosmic matter hanging in the air like afterimages. Benjamin Tennyson, the entity spoke, its voice resonating Rom everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Bearer of the Astral Omnitrix. Dimensional anchor of reality stream 10 Alpha. I have been expecting you. Ben maintained a careful distance, the Omnitrix's protective patterns now covering his entire body in a reactive shield. You have me at a disadvantage. You know my name, but I don't know yours. The cosmic entity's form shifted, contracting into or manageable size, still towering at 8 feet tall but no longer threatening to scrape the arena ceiling. Features resolved within its starlit face, creating the impression of eyes that burned with the intensity of distant galaxies. I am Lord Zenith, the being announced, each word sending ripples through the dimensional fabric around them. Architect of the dimensional schism. Creator of the astral network. And your judge. The Astral Omnitrix pulsed violently at this declaration, projecting information directly into Ben's consciousness, fragmented knowledge about the entity before him. Being called Zenith was ancient beyond comprehension, one of the original architects who had separated the dimensions following a catastrophic convergence event eons ago. Judge, Ben questioned, Ying time as he processed this information. Around them, security was successfully evacuating the nearest seating sections, creating a perimeter around their confrontation. From the corner of his eye, he could see Julie had moved to the edge of the court, concern evident in her posture. The Astral Omnitrix was never merely a tool, Zenith explained, gesturing toward Ben's wrist. It is a test, a means to identify worthy successors to maintain the dimensional boundaries. Successors, Ben repeated, understanding beginning to dawn. The regulators were failing deliberately. All systems require renewal, Zenith confirmed. Cosmic matter swirling around his form like a living nebula. The mechanical network served its purpose for 10 millennia, but entropy cannot be denied indefinitely. New guardians must be selected, beings capable of serving as living anchors. The implications settled like a weight in Ben's stomach. You've been watching me since I found it. Testing me, through your responses to the dimensional anomalies. Yes, Zenith's starlit eyes studied Ben with clinical detachment. You have demonstrated remarkable adaptation to the Astral Omnitrix's capabilities. Few candidates achieve such integration without losing their original identity entirely. Candidates, Ben noted the plural with growing unease. How many others are there? One selected bearer for each primary reality stream, Zenith replied. 17 in total, spread across the multiverse. Only those who successfully maintain dimensional stability while preserving their core consciousness advance to the final selection. And those who don't, Ben asked, though he suspected the answer, are consumed by the dimensional energies they cannot control, Zenith stated without emotion. Their realities are then reabsorbed into the primary continuum. A regrettable but necessary process of elimination. The casual mention of entire realities being erased sent a chill through Ben despite the Omnitrix's protective warmth. You're conducting some kind of cosmic tournament where the prize is continued existence. A crude but essentially accurate assessment, Zenith acknowledged. The multiverse cannot sustain infinite division indefinitely. Periodic reconvergence is necessary for cosmic health. And who made you the judge of which realities deserve to continue? Ben challenged, anger rising beneath his tactical caution. I am an architect, Zenith replied, as though this answered everything. Creation implies responsibility for maintenance. The Astral Omnitrix pulsed with increasing intensity, responding to Ben's emotional state. Energy patterns shifted across his skin, preparing for transformation without conscious command, the device's protective protocols identifying Zenith as a Threa. Despite the being's outwardly conversational demeanor. I didn't agree to this competition, Ben stated firmly. And I won't let you erase realities because their candidates didn't meet your standards. Zenith's cosmic form rippled with what might have been amusement. Your consent is irrelevant, Benjamin Tennyson. By accepting the Astral Omnitrix, you entered the selection process. You cannot withdraw without surrendering your reality's right to continued existence. Before Ben could respond, a familiar voice called from behind him. Ben. Julie approached, ignoring security's attempts to maintain the perimeter. Ship bounded alongside her, his mechamorph form exhibiting the same opalescent patterns he'd absorbed during their previous encounter with dimensional energy. What's happening? Julie. Stay back, Ben warned, not taking his eyes off Zenith. This isn't safe. When is it ever? She countered, stopping beside him with the same fearless determination that had first drawn him to her years ago. Ship expanded protectively around her feet, forming a semi-liquid barrier that pulsed with absorbed dimensional energy. Zenith observed this interaction with evident interest, his cosmic eyes shifting to study Julie. Fascinating. A personal connection that persists despite temporal separation. And the mechamorph has adapted to dimensional energies without degradation. Most unusual. She's not part of this. Ben stated firmly, subtly positioning himself between Julie and the cosmic entity. Everything is part of the selection process, Zenith corrected. A worthy herald must demonstrate proper valuation of their reality's components, particularly those with personal significance. Before either could respond, another dimensional tear manifested several meters away, small. Lower than Zenith's entrance but expanding rapidly. Through this new opening stepped Professor Epic, his usual casual demeanor replaced with uncharacteristic urgency. Lord Zenith, Epic acknowledged with formal deference. Your manifestation is premature according to the selection protocols. The candidate has not completed the preparatory phase. Circumstances necessitated acceleration, Zenith replied. Cosmic matter swirling more intensely around his form. Reality Stream 7 Gamma collapsed unexpectedly when its bearer attempted dimensional manipulation beyond their capacity. The resulting C. A cascade threatens adjacent streams including this one. Wait, Ben interrupted, processing this information. Another candidate failed, and now their entire reality is gone. Not merely gone, Zenith corrected. Reabsorbed into the primary continuum, its energy redistributed to strengthen remaining reality streams. A necessary sacrifice for cosmic stability. Julie's expression shifted from confu scion to horror as she grasped the implications. You're talking about entire universes being destroyed. Reconfigured, Zenith insisted. Nothing is truly destroyed in a dimensional collapse, merely reformatted into new patterns. Tell that to the people living in those patterns, Ben replied sharply. The Astral Omnitrix responded to his rising anger, energy lines spreading across his skin in defensive configurations that combined elements of multiple alien species, a hybrid transformation uniquely suited to the current threat. Epic moved closer, his normally cryptic manner replaced with direct urgency. Benjamin, you must understand, the dimensional fragmentation has reached critical thresholds. Without reconvergence, all realities face entropic collapse. Lord Zenith's selection process, while seemingly harsh, ensures at least some reality streams survive. By sacrificing others, Ben concluded, the transformed energy across his skin intensifying. That's not protection, it's cosmic triage. A necessary function, Zenith stated implacably, and one you must accept if you wish your reality to be among those preserved. The Astral Omnitrix suddenly projected a holographic display. A three-dimensional model of the local multiverse showing 17 reality streams arranged in a complex orbital pattern. One stream had already vanished, leaving a visible gap in the configuration. Several others pulsed with warning indicators, their boundaries visibly deteriorating. The final test begins now, Zenith announced, raising a hand composed of swirling galaxies. Prove your worthiness as Herald, Benjamin Tennyson. Or surrender your reality's right to exist. With a gesture that tore at the fabric of space-time, Zenith created a series of dimensional windows around the arena, each displaying a different location in Bellwood. In one, Gwen and Kevin were visible at the University Nexus Point. In another, Elena worked frantically in her laboratory, a third showed Kai coordinating evacuation of the remaining spectators, a fourth revealed Charmcaster preparing complex magical defenses at the city's edge. Your connections, Zenith explained. The anchors that bind you to this reality. Choose which to preserve and which to sacrifice. What? Ben's shock momentarily disrupted his transformation energy. I'm not choosing anyone to sacrifice. Then all will be lost, Zenith stated with cosmic indifference. The reconvergence requires energy drawn from severed connections. Without targeted sacrifice, the process draws indiscriminately from the entire reality stream. Julie stepped forward, her competitive determination evident in every line of her body. This is insane. You can't just demand Ben choose who lives or dies. I do not recognize your authority to question cosmic protocols. Zenith replied dismissively. Then recognize mine, Ben interjected, the Astral Omnitrix flaring with unprecedented intensity as he fully embraced its power. Energy cascaded across his form. Not in the patterns of any specific alien transformation but something entirely new, a manifestation of pure dimensional control. Through his connection to the Nexus energy, Ben could perceive the weaknesses in Zenith's presence. The cosmic being wasn't fully materialized in their reality, maintaining connections to multiple dimensions simultaneously. This divided presence created vulnerabilities in his dimensional coherence. I reject your test, Ben stated, voice resonating with power drawn directly from the dimensional boundaries he now helped maintain. I reject your author, ITY to determine which realities survive. And I absolutely reject the idea of sacrificing anyone. Zenith's cosmic form pulsed with what might have been surprise. You cannot reject the selection process. The reconvergence is inevitable. Maybe, Ben acknowledged, the Omnitrix responding to his intent by reconfiguring its energy patterns. But that doesn't mean it has to happen your way. With newfound clarity, Ben reached out through the Astral Omnitrix's connection to the dimensional network. He could sense the other candidates across reality streams, beings like himself who had bonded with versions of the device. Each struggling to maintain their dimensional boundaries against increasing pressure. Some were failing, others barely holding on, all isolated by Zenith's deliberately competitive structure. But they didn't have to remain isolated. Drawing on everything he'd learned since receiving the Astral Omnitrix, the hybrid transformations, the dimensional navigation, the Nexus integration, Ben established a direct connection to the other bearers. Not communication in the conventional sense, but a sharing of dimensional frequencies, harmonizing their individual efforts into a synchronized network. "What are you doing?" Zenith demanded, his cosmic form fluctuating with evident concern. "Changing the rules," Ben replied, the energy patterns across his skin shifting to accommodate the massive power requirements of cross-dimensional synchronization. Julie moved closer, ship expanding to connect with the Omnitrix's energy field, the mechamorph's absorbed dimensional properties serving as an amplifier for Ben's efforts. "Whatever you're doing, we've got your back," she assured him, her voice steady despite the cosmic forces swirling around them. Through the dimensional windows, Ben could see his other connections responding instinctively to his actions, Gwen channeling mana into the University Nexus Point, Elena redirecting energy through her laboratory equipment, Kai active, aiding the archaeological site's dormant systems, Charmcaster incorporating her magical defenses into the growing network. None of them understood exactly what was happening, but all recognized the need to support Ben's efforts against Zenith's ultimatum. Their trust provided not just emotional reinforcement but actual power, connection points that strengthened rather than weakened the dimensional fabric. "Stop this immediately," Zenith commanded, his cosmic form expanding with dangerous energy. "You risk catastrophic dimensional collapse." "Actually," Ben countered, the network continuing to strengthen as more candidates joined the synchronization, "we're preventing it. You've been forcing us to compete when we should have been cooperating." The holographic multiverse model projected from He Astral Omnitrix began to change. Reality streams that had been deteriorating now stabilizing as their bearers joined the growing synchronization network. Instead of fighting individually to maintain their isolated boundaries, they were now supporting a collective dimensional structure. Epic observed this transformation with academic fascination, his temporal dimensional expertise allowing him to appreciate what Ben had initiated. "Remarkable. Instead of selective reconvergence, you're establishing harmonic resonance between reality streams, maintaining separation while creating mutual support." "Impossible," Zenith insisted, though his cosmic certainty seemed less absolute than before. "The entropic degradation cannot be reversed through mere cooperation." "It's not mere cooperation," Ben corrected. "Understanding flowing through the Omnitrix's connection. It's synchronized intention across dimensional boundaries. The Astral Omnitrix doesn't just transform the bearer, it transforms reality itself based on the bearer's deepest values." Through the growing network, Ben could sense the other candidates, not their specific thoughts but their essential qualities. Each had been selected for potential compatibility with the Astral Omnitrix, each represented their reality's unique approach to existence, and each had refused to sacrifice their connections despite Zenith's demands. "You designed the Astral Omnitrix to find worthy successors," Ben continued, addressing Zenith directly. "But you defined worthiness as willingness to make impossible choices. What if the truly worthy approach is refusing those choices altogether? Finding a third option beyond your limited binary?" Zenith's cosmic form fluctuated between expansion and contraction, the being clearly struggling to process this unexpected development. "The selection protocols do not allow for cooperative solutions. Each reality must prove its individual value for preservation." "Then your protocols are flawed," Ben stated with quiet certainty. "Because no reality exists in isolation. That's what the dimensional network has been showing me since the beginning. Everything is connected, even across boundaries that seem absolute." The synchronized network had now encompassed all remaining candidates, their combined efforts creating a new pattern in the multiverse model, not the competitive orbital arrangement Zenith had established, but an interwoven lattice where each reality supported its neighbors while maintaining distinct identity. Julie, witnessing this transformation despite limited understanding of its cosmic significance, smiled with unmistakable pride. "He's always been good at changing the rules when they don't make sense," she told Zenith, as though explaining something obvious. Zenith's cosmic form continued to fluctuate, analysis visibly warring with rigid adherence to established protocols. "This approach was unanticipated in the selection design. That's because you were looking for heralds who would follow your existing system, Ben explained, maintaining the delicate dimensional synchronization. But what you actually created were potential successors who could improve upon it. Professor Epic stepped forward, addressing his cosmic superior with careful deference but unmistakable support for Ben's position. The candidate demonstrates innovation beyond established parameters, Lord Zenith. By conventional metrics, this qualifies as superior adaptation rather than protocol violation. For several moments, cosmic energy swirled around Zenith's form as the ancient being processed this challenge to 10 millennia of established order. The dimensional windows remained active, displaying Ben's connections, each contributing in their unique way to the stabilization effort, nay aware they had been targeted for potential sacrifice in Zenith's original test. Finally, the cosmic entity's form settled into more stable configuration, indicating a decision had been reached. Your solution is unconventional, Benjamin Tennyson, but not without merit. The dimensional windows closed one by one as Zenith's attention shifted from testing to evaluation. The synchronized network RK approach demonstrates previously unexplored potential in the dimensional management system. Further analysis is required before final judgment. Meaning, Ben prompted, maintaining the network connection through the Astral Omnitrix despite growing fatigue from the massive energy requirements. Meaning your trial period is extended, Zenith clarified, cosmic matter reconfiguring around his form. You and the other remaining candidates will continue to maintain your respective reality streams through this cooperative method. Its long-term viability remains to be determined. And no sacrifices, Ben insisted, unwilling to accept ambiguity on this critical point. The sacrifice protocol is suspended pending evaluation of alternative approaches, Zenith conceded, though cosmic reluctance was evident in his fluctuating form. But be warned, should this synchronized network fail, the original reconvergence plan will be immediately reinstated. Before Ben could respond, Zenith's form began to dissipate, cosmic matter spreading into increasingly tenuous configurations. We will observe your progress, Herald of Stars. Succeed, and you may indeed rewrite the cosmic order. Fail, and all will return to the primary continuum. With these parting words, the cosmic entity disappeared completely, leaving behind only faint opalescent patterns in the air that gradually faded. The diamond's ional tear through which he had arrived sealed itself with a sound like reality exhaling after held breath. Professor Epic remained, studying Ben with newfound respect. Most impressive, Mr. Tennyson. In 17,000 observed timelines, only 3 candidates have ever challenged Zenith's methodology directly. None have proposed a viable alternative until now. Did I pass the test? Ben asked, the synchronized network still humming through his connection to the Astral Omnitrix, though Zenith's departure had reduced the immediate power requirements. You created an entirely new test, Epic replied with evident amusement. One even Lord Zenith must now adapt to. I would call that more significant than mere passing. Julie approached cautiously, ship still extended protectively around her feet. So, is it over? The cosmic judgment day or whatever that was. Epic shook his head. Merely postponed. The fundamental dimensional instability remains, though the synchronized network pairs to be managing it more effectively than isolated efforts. A promising development, if sustainable. And that's my job now, Ben concluded, studying the Astral Omnitrix as its energy patterns gradually receded from his skin. Maintaining this network, being the Herald of Stars, whatever that means. It means precisely what you make of it, Epic replied cryptically before checking his peculiar watch. And with that philosophical observation, I must return to my duties. Dimensional disturbances don't monitor themselves, after all. With a casual salute that seemed incongruously in form. Given the cosmic significance of recent events, Epic stepped backward into a spontaneously forming temporal portal and disappeared. The arena had emptied completely during the confrontation, leaving Ben and Julie standing alone in the suddenly vast space. From the tennis court, Julie's opponent and the tournament officials watched uncertainly, clearly unsure whether the championship match would or could continue. So, Julie said after a moment, gesturing toward the abandoned court, I was kind of in the middle of something important. Ben blinked, then laughed, a release of tension that felt almost foreign after the cosmic intensity of the past minutes. Right, the championship. Sorry about the interdimensional interruption. I've learned to schedule extra time for Tennyson-related emergencies, she replied with a wry smile that carried more understanding than resentment. Think the cosmic forces of the universe can spare you to watch me finish this match? Ben checked the Astral Omnitrix, which had settled into a steady, harmonious pulse, the synchronized network stabilizing across dimensional boundaries. I think the universe can manage without direct supervision for a couple hours. Good, Julie stated decisively, already turning back toward the court where officials were cautiously approaching to determine whether play could resume. Because I've worked too hard to let interdimensional politics ruin my shot at the top 10. Ship chirped enthusiastic agreement, returning to his more compact form beside her. The mechamorph's absorbed dimensional energy had stabilized into permanent patterns that matched the Astral Omnitrix's opalescent swirls, a visible reminder of their connection to Ben's new cosmic responsibility. As Julie returned to the court, explaining the situation to increasingly relieved tournament officials, Ben felt his phone vibrate with multiple incoming messages. Checking the screen, he found questions from everyone who had witnessed the demency. Onal disturbance through Zenith's windows, Gwen, Kevin, Elena, Kai, even Charmcaster. Rather than attempting to explain the cosmic complexities via text, he sent a simple group message. Crisis handled for now. We'll explain later. Watching Julie's match first. Some things are important even to cosmic heralds. Returning to his seat as the match preparations resumed, Ben was surprised to find Kai still present. Having apparently returned after ensuring the spectators' safe evacuation. You're staying? He asked as she reclaimed her seat beside him. Professional curiosity, she replied, though her casual tone didn't quite disguise deeper interest. Not every day you get to witness the continuation of a tennis match after interdimensional judgment has been postponed. Ben smiled, settling back, as Julie and her opponent retook their positions. Thanks for helping with the evacuation. And for whatever you did with the archaeological equipment during the synchronization. I could feel it strengthening the network. The satellite facility responded to dimensional harmonics I didn't activate, Kai admitted. Almost as though it recognized what you were attempting and adjusted automatically to support it. The architects built better than they knew, Ben suggested. Or maybe they knew exactly what might eventually happen. Their conversation paused as the match resumed, Julie immediately reclaiming her competitive focus despite the cosmic interruption. Her first serve after the delay was her fastest of the day, a statement of intent that drew appreciative applause from the returning spectators. She's remarkable, Kai observed with genuine admiration. To shift mental gears that completely, from witnessing interdimensional confrontation to professional athletics in minutes. It's why we worked as a couple for so long. Ben replied, watching Julie claim the first point with athletic precision. She compartmentalizes even better than I do. Useful skill when dating someone who transforms into aliens and fights cosmic threats on weekends. Past tense. Kai inquired with careful neutrality. Ben considered the question, watching as Julie seamlessly adapted her strategy to counter her opponent's aggressive response. Complicated tense. We never officially ended things, just drifted with careers and distance. Then I got caught up in senior year, she had the pro circuit. And now she's back in Bellwood. Kai concluded, her tone revealing nothing of her own thoughts on the matter. For this tournament, at least, Ben confirmed. After that, who knows? The Astral Omnitrix pulsed gently against his skin, a subtle reminder of new responsibilities that transcended conventional life planning. The synchronized network hummed in the background of his awareness, 17R. Elite streams maintaining harmonic resonance through their bearers' shared connection. And what about you? Kai asked, her attention seemingly focused on her scanner though her question carried obvious personal significance. Now that you're officially the Herald of Stars or whatever cosmic title that entity bestowed. Ben watched as Julie claimed another point with ballistic precision, her FOC. Used determination visible in every movement. I'm still figuring that out. Being responsible for dimensional stability across multiple realities wasn't exactly in my 5-year plan. I'd be concerned if it had been. Kai replied with a hint of her dry humor. Even for a Tennyson, that's ambitious career planning. The match progressed with increasing intensity, Julie and her opponent exchanging powerful shots that demonstrated why both had reached the championship. Despite the earlier interruption, the crowd had returned to full capacity, their energy building with each expertly executed rally. During a brief changeover, Julie glanced toward Ben's section, offering a small smile that contained both acknowledgement and something more complex, a connection that had endured despite time and circumstances. Ben returned the smile, feeling a familiar warmth that cosmic responsibilities couldn't diminish. Kai noticed the exchange, her perceptive gaze missing nothing. "You still care about her." "I never stopped," Ben admitted simply. "And what about us?" Kai asked after a moment, her usual archaeological detachment giving way to direct inquiry. "This, whatever it's been since I returned. The research partnership with occasional lingering looks and conversations that dance around the past." Ben turned to face her fully, recognizing the importance of honesty in this moment. "I care about you too, Kai. Always have, despite our complicated history. But with everything that's happening now, dimensional responsibilities, synchronized networks, being some kind of cosmic herald, I don't know what's possible anymore." "Fair enough," she acknowledged, her expression thoughtful rather than disappointed. "Though I should point out that as a xenoarchaeologist specializing in dimensional artifacts, I'm possibly the most qualified person to understand your new cosmic job description." The observation drew a genuine laugh from Ben. "Good point. Elena made a similar argument from the scientific perspective. Something about my dimensional connection being an unprecedented research opportunity." "Ah, drive. Validus," Kai nodded with professional recognition. "Brilliant nanite work. Terrible poker face when she looks at you." "What's that supposed to mean?" Ben asked, though he suspected the answer. Kai simply raised an eyebrow, returning her attention to the match as Julie began doming. Aiding the final set with increasingly confident play. "It means your dimensional herald position comes with complicated personal entanglements. Something tells me that's not coincidental." Before Ben could respond, the Astral Omnitrix pulsed with subtle information, impressions rather than words, conveying complex dimensional concepts through intuitive understanding. Through its connection, he sends a fundamental truth about his new role that Zenith had either not known or deliberately concealed. The connections matter, he realized aloud. Not as potential sacrifices, but as anchors. The synchronized network is stronger because of them, not despite them. Meaning, Kai prompted, recognizing his expression of sudden insight. Meaning Zenith was wrong about isolation being necessary for dimensional management, Ben explained, watching as Julie approached match point with graceful determination. "The relationships that connect us to our realities aren't vulnerabilities, they're essential components of the system." The Astral Omnitrix confirmed this understanding with a harmonic pulse that resonated through the synchronized network, strengthening connections across 17 reality streams. Each bearer would be receiving the same insight through their respective devices, the fundamental recognition that connection rather than detachment was the true source of their dimensional stability. "So your cosmic job description actually requires maintaining personal relationships," Kai summarized with amused skepticism. "Convenient. Not maintaining them artificially," Ben clarified. As the revelation continued unfolding through the Omnitrix's connection, being authentic in them, the network responds to genuine connection, not performance or obligation. On court, Julie served foe. Our championship point. A perfect execution that her opponent returned with equal precision, initiating the most intense rally of the match. Each shot demonstrated years of dedicated training, split-second decisions under pressure. The culmination of thousands of hours of practice. "I think I understand," Kai said quietly, watching the athletic display. Authenticity creates stronger reality anchors than pretense. Just as Julie's genuine training produces better results than if she were merely going through the motions. "Exactly," Ben confirmed, the concept crystallizing through both observation and the Omnitrix's continued impression-based communication. Zenith's test was fundamentally flawed because it forced artificial choices that undermined authentic connection. The championship point extended beyond 20 shots, neither player willing to concede the final exchange. Julie moved across the court with fluid precision, each placement strategically forcing her opponent into increasingly difficult returns. "So what does this mean for us?" Kai asked, her directness cutting through philosophical abstraction. "For you and me, and you and Julie, and whatever other connections you're navigating." Ben considered this as Julie finally claimed championship point with a perfectly angled shot that skimmed the line, unmistakably in, definitively unreturnable. The crowd erupted in thundero. Applause as she raised her arms in victory, professional composure momentarily giving way to genuine joy. It means I need to be honest about where I am, Ben replied, watching as Julie accepted congratulations from her opponent with gracious sportsmanship. I care about you both, but I'm also now responsible for dimensional stability across multiple realities. I can't pretend that doesn't complicate everything. Honesty works. Kai nodded, her expression suggesting appreciation for the direct approach. Better than the alternative, certainly. The post-match ceremony proceeded with formal efficiency, trophies presented, photographs taken, official statements recorded. Throughout it all, Julie maintained professional poise, though her smile when looking toward Ben's section carried unmistakable personal warmth. As spectators began filing out following the ceremony, Ben's phone vibrated with an incoming message from Julie. Trophy ceremony obligations for another hour. Meet me after. We should talk about everything. You should go, Kai said, having noticed the message. Championship conversations take priority over dimensional theorizing. You sure? Ben asked, not wanting to dismiss their own important discussion. Kai nodded with characteristic pragmatism. The archaeological team needs direction after today's disturbances anyway. And unlike tennis championships, ancient alien technology has remarkable patience. Quote, she gathered her equipment with practiced efficiency, then paused before leaving. For what it's worth, Ben, I think you might be the first Tennyson whose act you ally qualified for the cosmic responsibility you've been given. The Herald of Stars title suits you, melodramatic as it sounds. Thanks, I think, Ben replied with a slight smile. Don't let it go to your head, she added with familiar dryness. I've dated enough academics to recognize when someone's about to become insufferable with new credentials. The comment drew a genuine laugh from Ben. No chance of that. Hard to develop cosmic ego when your cousin still reminds you about the time you got your head stuck in an alien toilet at age 11. Kai's smile held genuine warmth. Call me tomorrow. The satellite facility is showing some interesting responses to the synchronized network that might help strengthen your dimensional connections. Will do, Ben promised as she departed, leaving him alone in the rapidly emptying arena. The Astral Omnitrix pulsed gently against his skin, a reminder of responsibilities that extended far beyond Bellwood, beyond Earth, beyond his home dimension. Through its connection, he could sense the synchronized network continuing to stabilize as other bearers incorporated the insights about authentic connection, strengthening dimensional anchors. After ensuring the dimensional disturbance had left no lingering effects in the arena, Ben made his way to the players' area, his plumber credentials easily overriding security restrictions. He found a quiet corner to wait, using the time to check in with Gwen and the others who had witnessed portions of the confrontation through Zenith's dimensional windows. Their questions were numerous and complex, ranging from technical inquiries about the synchronized network to personal concerns about the cosmic entity's apparent power to restructure reality. Ben answered as best he could, though many aspects of his new role remained intuitive rather than explicitly defined, understanding conveyed through the Omnitrix's connection rather than formal instruction. An hour later, Julie emerged from the locker rooms. Trophy carefully packed in a custom case, tennis equipment exchanged for casual attire. Ship bounced excitedly at her side, his mechamorph form still displaying the opalescent patterns that connected him to Ben's dimensional energy. Champion, Ben greeted her with genuine admiration. That last point was incredible. Thanks, she replied, professional satisfaction evident in her smile. Huff, it loses some dramatic impact when compared to preventing multiversal collapse during the same match. Different skill sets, Ben shrugged with deliberate modesty. I can't hit a backhand to save my life. True, Julie agreed, her smile widening at the familiar banter. I've seen your attempts. Cosmic Herald or not, your tennis game needs serious work. They fell into step together naturally, heading toward the arena exit. Ship bounced between them, occasionally brushing against the Astral Omnitrix with what appeared to be deliberate contact, the mechamorph's acquired dimensional sensitivity allowing him to interact with the device's energy field. So, Julie began as they reached the parking area, Herald of Stars. Fancy new title to go with the fancy new watch. Not my idea, Ben assured her. Cosmic entities have a flair for the dramatic apparently. Says the guy who shouts transformation names every time he changes form, she teased. Fair point, he conceded with a smile that quickly sobered. Julie, about what happened today. The dimensional test, Zenith, everything you witnessed. Let me guess, she interrupted gently. It's complicated, potentially dangerous, and completely changes everything about your already complicated life. Pretty much, Ben admitted, impressed as always by her perceptive understanding. Julie considered this as they reached her car, a practical hybrid rather than the flashy vehicle her tennis earnings might have afforded. You know what I realized during that final set? What's that? Nothing has actually changed, she stated with quiet certainty. You've always had extraordinary responsibilities. You've always balanced them with trying to have a normal life. The scale is different now, but the fundamental challenge is exactly the same. The observation struck Ben with its simple accuracy. From the moment he'd found the original Omnitrix at age 10, his life had been defined by balancing cosmic responsibility with human connection. The Astral Omnitrix represented an evolution of that challenge rather than a completely new paradigm. That's surprisingly helpful perspective, he acknowledged. Years of professional sports psychology. Julie replied with a small smile. You learn to recognize when circumstances change versus when the same challenge just presents in a new form. She opened her car door but paused before entering. So, Herald of Stars, now that you've saved multiple realities and I've won the North American Championship, how about that dinner we kept postponing? I'm suddenly starving. Dinner sounds great, Ben agreed. The normalcy of the suggestion providing welcome contrast to cosmic confrontations. Though fair warning, I might get interdimensional calls from other reality anchors. Apparently we're all connected now. I'll make sure we choose a restaurant with good reception, Julie replied with the practical adaptability that had always defined her approach to Ben's extraordinary life. And maybe one with outdoor seating for Ship. He seems particularly attached to your new watch. The mechamorph chirped agreement, extending a tendril to briefly connect with the Astral Omnitrix in what appeared to be affectionate communication. As they departed the arena together, Ben felt the synchronized network humming through his connection to the Omnitrix, 17 realities maintaining harmonic resonance across dimensional boundaries, each supported by bearers who had chosen connection over isolation. The system Zenith had designed for competition had been transformed into cooperation, creating stability through shared purpose rather than survival of the fittest. Whether this new approach would ultimately satisfy the ancient architect remained to be seen. For now, the dimensions were stable, the immediate crisis averted, and Ben had a championship dinner to attend, a moment of authentic human connection amid cosmic responsibilities. The Herald of Stars had earned at least one normal evening. ___. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.